Chapter 925. When Jun Yixie got up, Ning Cheng wanted to chase after him, but several guards hurried over to stop him. Ning Cheng stared at Jun Yixie, the anger in his eyes burning fiercely, as if it would never cease. Jun Yixie's teeth were broken, and his face was bruised and swollen. He got up on his own. Bai Yuqiao ignored the pain on his body and rushed over to help him up, but was pushed away. Bai Yuqiao fell to the ground, but Jun Yixie didn't even look at her. Perhaps he didn't even notice that the person who came to help him was Bai Yuqiao, and only thought that it was a guard. Bai Yuqiao was in so much pain from Ning Cheng's kick, and with this fall, he was in so much pain that he couldn't get up. Jun Yixie wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his lips curled into a cold and arrogant smile. If Ning Cheng had come up with another reason to agree to cooperate with him, he would have been suspicious. However, he definitely wouldn't doubt Ning Cheng's reason. Although the D clan was a merchant family, they were famous among the 7 noble families for their integrity. Even if the D clan was disappointed with Western Qin, they wouldn't cooperate with the Black clan and betray Western Qin. However, Ning Cheng's love had turned into hatred, so it was better not to talk about it. Jun Yixie licked the blood from the corner of his mouth, and once again sized up the phoenix feather mask on Ning Cheng's face. The more he looked at it, the more meaningful it seemed. He chuckled and said, "You used the phoenix feather mask to block that blind eye. How interesting. How do you want to cooperate?" Ning Cheng asked coldly. Jun Yixie didn't answer immediately, and instead invited Ning Cheng into the barracks. In the tent, Jun Yixie casually sat down on the main seat and told Ning Cheng directly, "Pay." Ning Cheng's eyes flashed with contempt as he asked, "How much do you need?" "The Northern Dynasty's emperors cut off all of my rations. The 30,000 horses here need rations. In the following month, the 2nd and 3rd batches of horses will arrive, and they will all need money to feed them. Winter provisions are the most expensive." Jun Yixie asked for money very straightforwardly, without blushing at all. "That's all." Ning Cheng played dumb. "I still have 10,000 cavalrymen under my command." Jun Yixie added. "That's it?" Ning Cheng asked again. Jun Yixie was about to nod when Ning Cheng said coldly, "Jun Yixie, you should know that our cooperation is not a business deal. Just tell me how much you want. This patriarch is not in the mood to haggle with you." Jun Yixie rubbed his aching shoulder and laughed. "Good, that's straightforward enough. I want 1 billion. If it were anyone else, they would have been frightened by this number." But Ning Cheng's expression didn't change, and he didn't even frown. Coldly, he said, "Just 90,000 horses and 10,000 cavalrymen for the winter. All of the military supplies will be at most 20 million. Ning Cheng wasn't just a merchant, but also a general who led troops into battle. He was very clear about the situation in the army. "So, Patriarch Ning only plans to cooperate with me for 1 winter?" Jun Yixie raised an eyebrow and asked. "I'm only calculating for 1 season." Ning Cheng lightly said, "I want to raise more than 90,000 horses and 10,000 cavalrymen." Jun Yixie stood up and walked over to the map hanging on the wall. He pointed to several locations. "The troops in these places are usually raised by me." Jun Yixie wanted money, but he also wanted to show off his military strength to Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng glanced at the map and memorized all the markings on it. From these markings, he could see the situation of the military strength in various regions of Northern Li. It seems that Bai Yuqiao didn't lie to him. Jun Yixie really did have the strength to fight against the Northern Dynasty's emperors. If he had enough provisions, then once he sent out his troops, Northern Li would definitely fall into chaos. Although the Northern Dynasty's emperors wouldn't be defeated, they wouldn't be able to gain any benefits from Jun Yixie. "Even with these, I still don't need 1 billion. Ning Cheng calmly said. 1 billion, including the cost of the cooperation between the Black and D clans. In the future, whether it's dealing with the Long Fei Yi or conquering Western Zhou's Tianing, I won't ask you for a single cent." Jun Yixie seriously said. Ning Cheng smiled. "I can give you 1 billion, but what can your Black clan give me? What do you want?" Jun Yixie asked back. Ning Cheng coldly said 3 words, "Han Yunshi." Jun Yixie's eyes flashed with a cold smile. He stood up and walked over. He patted Ning Cheng's shoulder and probed. "Brother, why do you have to do this? You and I will rule Cloud Realm together in the future. What kind of woman can't we have? If you can't do it, then there's nothing to talk about." Ning Cheng was very decisive. Jun Yixie immediately raised his hand and let go of Ning Cheng's shoulder. "Master Ning, if you want to snatch a woman, go snatch it yourself. I'm not interested." Ning Cheng's eyes flashed with a sinister glint. Coldly, he said, "Give me 30,000 military horses and 10,000 cavalrymen." Although Ning Cheng repeatedly emphasized Han Yunxi, these words still aroused Jun Yixie's vigilance. Jun Yixie meaningfully sized him up, but didn't say anything. "You can help my D-clan army fight against the Long Fei Yi. I can provide for all your horses and soldiers. I can also add another 100 million taels for you to recruit soldiers. This winter, you only need to throw northernly into chaos. When spring comes next year, you can lead your troops south and take control of the south." Jun Yixie still didn't say anything. He walked back to his seat and slowly sat down. If he gave Ning Cheng 30,000 military horses, Ning Cheng's military strength would increase greatly. In addition to the D-clan's red barbarian cannons, the D-clan would really be able to contend against the Long Fei Yi. Perhaps they would even have a chance of winning. He had 60,000 cavalrymen left behind. In addition to the various forces in Northern Li, it was enough to contend against the Northern Dynasty's emperor's military strength. When Ning Cheng and the Long Fei Yi were both heavily injured, he would be able to take care of the Northern Dynasty's emperors and reap the benefits from the south. However, if Ning Cheng regretted it, wouldn't he have cheated him of 30,000 war horses for nothing? In this kind of chaotic time, although 1 billion taels was a lot, he definitely couldn't buy so many war horses. Even if he made another trip to Winter Crow, he wouldn't be able to bring back so many war horses. What if Ning Cheng bid him back after obtaining the 30,000 war horses? Ning Cheng wasn't in a hurry. He let Jun Yixie think about it. He turned around with his hands behind his back and looked at the map on the wall. Jun Yixie looked at Ning Cheng's back and slowly narrowed his eyes. Because of his master's matter, he had been a bit impulsive. Now that he had calmed down, he thought about how he had easily told Ning Cheng the secret of the Eastern and Western Qin Civil War. It seemed a bit inappropriate. If Ning Cheng continued to be loyal to Western Qin and no longer made an enemy of East Qin, then wouldn't everything he did today be smashing his own foot with a rock? The more Jun Yixie thought, the more complicated his eyes became. Ning Cheng looked like he was paying attention to the map, but his eyes were always looking at Jun Yixie. He hesitated a bit before saying, "Jun Yixie, I've said it before. The world is yours and Han Yunxi is mine. When I defeat Long Fei Yi, I'll return the 30,000 war horses to you. It's not impossible. Women are like clothes. You may think about it today, but perhaps after this year, you won't like it anymore." Jun Yixie's words were very subtle, but Ning Cheng was very direct. "My body is poisoned and I rely on Bai Yuqiao's antidote to survive. You cannot believe me, but at least believe in your junior sister's poison." Jun Yixie finally realized this point. With Ning Cheng's weakness in his hands, he wasn't afraid of Ning Cheng biting back at him. "It looks like I'll have to trouble clan head Ning to stay with my army." Jun Yixie smiled. In other words, he was going to put Ning Cheng under house arrest. Han Yunxi was a detoxification expert. How could he set his mind at ease if she let Ning Cheng go? If he put Ning Cheng under house arrest by his side, he could indirectly steal Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's money through Ning Cheng. He could even control the D-clan for his own use. After dispelling his suspicions, Jun Yixie was too fond of such a profitable business deal. "Then I'll have to trouble you to take care of me," Ning Cheng said mildly. "You're too polite." Jun Yixie smiled with satisfaction. Just like that, Ning Cheng stayed at Jun Yixie's horse farm. Jun Yixie didn't seem to restrict Ning Cheng, but he secretly sent many people to keep an eye on Ning Cheng and keep an eye on Ning Cheng's every move. He didn't tell Ning Cheng to arrange the soldiers' pay and provisions right away, But Ning Cheng wasn't in a rush to do so either. He didn't go anywhere, but sat by the gates of the barracks in a daze all day. As for Bai Yanqing's matter, Jun Yixie didn't bring it up again. By nightfall, Jun Yixie had Ning Cheng write a letter to the D clan to report his safety. Ning Cheng naturally knew that Jun Yixie would read his letter, so he only wrote a few words. Staying at Northern Lee's horse farm for now. Everything is well. Who should he write this letter to? Ning Cheng's first thought was Han Yunqi. He had been missing for so many days, so the entire D clan must be looking for him. What about Han Yunqi? As he thought about this, his eye under the phoenix feather began to ache. What was Han Yunqi doing now? Was she still with Long Fei? Was she still tracking Bai Yanqing? Ning Cheng hesitated for a moment, then wrote Old Cheng on the envelope. Jun Yixie had already seen what Ning Cheng wrote in the letter. He took the letter without even looking at it, then asked with interest, Old Cheng? Who's that? A servant who has been with me for more than 10 years, Ning Cheng said mildly. Jun Yixie casually handed the letter to an attendant beside him to send it out. I heard that Myriad Merchant Hall hasn't been peaceful recently. There's been trouble at the gambling houses and auction houses, Jun Yixie probed. A complicated look flitted past Ning Cheng's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He said disdainfully, There's nothing my Myriad Merchant Hall can't handle in the three-way black market. Outsiders might not know, but Ning Cheng was well aware. Ever since Cloud Realm Trade Consortium lost its medicinal ingredients business in the South Central Regions market, it had suffered heavy losses over the past 2 years. It was all thanks to the gambling houses and auction houses that they could keep afloat. If both places were in trouble, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. After all, the D clan and his subordinates, as well as the consortium's unprofitable businesses, were all dependent on Myriad Merchant Hall. What had happened to the gambling houses and auction houses? Would the Council of Elders be able to hold on without him? Was that girl Ning Jing still in the black market? Ning Cheng hid all his worries in his heart. Jun Yixie really didn't know the inner workings of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, nor did he have much interest in the black market. In any case, he was certain that the D clan had plenty of silver. Rest and recuperate for a few days. We'll talk about the soldiers' pay another day, Jun Yixie said seriously. 1 billion was a huge sum. Was Ning Cheng planning to pay it all at once, or how? How is Ning Cheng going to pay for 30,000 battle horses? Should he tell the world about his cooperation with Ning Cheng, or do it in secret? Everything still needed to be discussed in detail. As soon as Jun Yixie left Ning Cheng's place, Bai Yuqiao came looking for him. Senior brother, master's matter, enough. Jun Yixie cut him off coldly. Senior brother, don't tell me you're still. Jun Yixie abruptly turned around, his gaze fierce. It's none of your business to talk about the matters between me and Master. So speaking, he stalked off. Bai Yuqiao felt her heart ache. At least she tried her best, she thought. At least senior brother knew the truth. After over 20 years of master and disciple love, how could they hate each other so easily? Of course, once they did, there would be no turning back. Jun Yixie wasn't stupid, but he needed time to hide and lick his wounds. Meanwhile, the commotion had died down and the conspiracy was settled. Ning Cheng sat alone in the barracks, licking the wounds of the D clan and himself. The faith of 3 generations, the persistence of 100 years, and his perseverance had suddenly turned into a joke overnight. Chapter 926. The enmity between Eastern and Western Qin was nothing but a misunderstanding, a joke. If Han Yunqi knew about this, she would be very happy, right? How happy would she be? Would she be as happy as a little girl, screaming and jumping up and down? Ning Cheng had never seen her like that. In fact, he had never seen her smile before. Thinking of this, he seemed to see that woman's confident and bright smile. How would Long Fei react? Even if Ning Cheng was unwilling to accept or believe it, he had to admit that Long Fei and Han Yunqi had won the bet this time. What else could he refuse to accept from Han Yunqi? She was the master, and he was the servant. She was the monarch, and he was the subject. She did not forget her important task, and did not have an affair with the enemy. What right did he have to refuse to accept her? She chose Long Fei Yi, so what reason did he have to interfere? Ning Chung sat on the ground with his head bowed and his hands resting on his knees. In the darkness, the candlelight illuminated the strong contours of his face, causing his lips to curve up into a bitter smile. It was as if this was his fate, but there was nothing he could do. He did not believe that Eastern and Western Qin was just a misunderstanding. How could it be so coincidental that he was the first to know this secret? Ning Chung was immersed in his thoughts when Bai Yuqiao walked in. "Have I talked to my senior brother?" Bai Yuqiao asked. Ning Chung looked up at her and sneered in his heart. Bai Yuqiao would be a very useful chess piece. The truth was revealed, but did not mean that the hatred of so many years would end. The civil war of the Great Qin Empire had caused countless deaths and countless sacrifices. This debt was real. Who would pay for this debt? Naturally, it would be the Black Clan and the Wind Clan. He could not do anything to Bai Yanqing, but he did not believe that he could not take down Jun Yixie. Ning Cheng's letter to Uncle Cheng was on the way, and Uncle Cheng's situation was not good at all. Han Yunxi and her group had already completed the transaction of South Ju Garden and West Jade Garden. After paying the banknotes and receiving the title deeds, they returned to the three-way black market. Uncle Cheng sat in Myriad Merchant Hall for a while, then found an excuse to slip away. He had previously made an agreement with Jia Dai that once the transaction was completed, he would go to the three-way black market's Jianfu Bank to get the money. But he had already waited at Fortune Bank for an hour, but he still didn't see Jia Dai's people coming over. Jia Dai had raised the price at the last minute without discussing it with him, and now he had not come to meet him. The more Uncle Cheng thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. After sitting for a while longer, he made a prompt decision to rush to Myriad Merchant Hall's Thriving Heavens Bank. Half of the banknotes that Han Yunxi and First Elder paid to Jia Dai were issued by Thriving Heavens Bank and could be exchanged for silver taels at any of Myriad Merchant Hall's banks. If he blocked the account number of those banknotes before Jia Dai cashed in the cash, those banknotes would become invalid, and Jia Dai would not be able to get the silver taels. However, when Uncle Cheng arrived at Thriving Heavens Bank, he was informed that those banknotes had already been exchanged at other banks. Damn it! Uncle Cheng pounded his fist on the counter, scaring the manager so much that he did not know what to do. Simply abominable. Uncle Cheng was unable to restrain his anger, but very soon, he could not be bothered to be angry. Instead, it was replaced by panic. Without that sum of money, how was he going to help Deacon Jean repay his debt? The deadline that he had promised Deacon Jean was tonight. Uncle Cheng gradually fell silent, his expression complicated. Seeing this, the manager cautiously leaned over and whispered, "Uncle Cheng, these banknotes were issued by the Council of Elders, right? What kind of deal did First Elder make recently that required such a large sum of silver? How would the subordinates know that the Princess of Western Qin had already meddled in Myriad Merchant Hall's affairs? And how would the Council of Elders' expenses be known by the subordinates? In the bank, only the manager knew that Myriad Merchant Hall had paid out 700 million in banknotes this afternoon. Uncle Cheng was immersed in his own thoughts and did not hear the manager's question at all. Right now, he only had two paths. One was to silence them before Deacon Jean found Han Yunxi and the Council of Elders. The other was to flee. After Uncle Cheng left Thriving Heavens Bank, he did not return to Myriad Merchant Hall. Instead, he called for several experts to accompany him and headed towards the three-way black market's most chaotic brothel. Although it was already late at night, Han Yunxi was still very, very busy. After returning from West Jade Garden, she discussed with the elders about reopening the casinos. South Ju Garden and West Jade Garden had many courtyards that could be used directly and did not need to be renovated. It would be fine as long as they moved everything from the casinos. Let's start tonight. Remember, this must be kept a secret. The casinos must be reopened within 10 days at the latest, Han Yunxi said seriously. Ever since she left Ning Jing's place, she had been on high alert, unwilling to relax for even a moment. "Princess, please name the casinos," First Elder said respectfully. They had discussed and decided to name South Jew Garden, which was closest to Three-Way Black Market, as an ordinary casino. They would open it first, while West J Garden would use a membership system. They would spread the news first and wait for a while. Han Yunchi thought for a moment, then said, "Let's use the original name. In a few days, find some people to spread the news that the casinos are opened by the garden owner." First Elder clapped his hands in approval. Such misleading rumors would only make the casino's origins more and more mysterious. This would definitely do them more good than harm. Han Yunshi and the other elders finalized a few more details before the meeting ended. Han Yunshi was pushed by a maidservant and chatted with the elders all the way out of the meeting hall. "Your Highness, these 2 days have been hard on you. Your Highness, quickly go and rest. Leave the rest to us. Don't worry." Han Yunshi was about to ask about the situation at the auction hall when a servant ran over excitedly. "Your Highness, First Elder, the auction hall is open." "Really?" First Elder was overjoyed. All 3 main halls are open for business, and they're all big deals. The East Hall opened 2 orders in a row. The customer for the second order directly paid for it without borrowing money from Kingan Bank, the servant said excitedly. First Elder was so happy that he didn't know what to say. His tired, bloodshot eyes were wet with tears. He had been under the most pressure over the past few days. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, the Army, and the various D-Clan factions scattered across Cloud Realm continent had all sent letters to ask about Myriad Merchant Hall's situation. Today, he'd tossed out 700 million to buy 2 gardens. Although he looked calm, his heart was still trembling. He was afraid that the D-Clan's centuries-old foundation would crumble in his hands. Fortunately, the crisis at the auction hall had been resolved. Now, Myriad Merchant Hall didn't have to worry about risks anymore. They could afford to gamble. The elders exchanged looks, their joy evident in their words. In the end, they all looked towards Han Yunshi, unsure of how to express their gratitude. Han Yunshi silently exhaled in relief. She was happy too. Smiling, she said, "Everyone, rest early. Get a good night's sleep." She knew how much pressure these 5 elders had to bear. Presumably, they would be able to sleep peacefully tonight. Everyone laughed at Han Yunshi's words. "That's right. Have you found those troublemakers from the gambling houses?" Han Yunshi asked. "We're still investigating. We'll report as soon as there's any news." The head elder replied hastily. Han Yunshi nodded and dismissed everyone. She was going to have a servant girl push her over to Ning Jing's room for a look, but she suddenly remembered someone else and didn't go over. She'd only been gone for 2 days. Why did it feel so long after spending a night outside? Why did it feel like she hadn't seen the Long Fei Yi for 3 years? Was that guy already waiting for him in her room? Han Yunshi's ears still burned when she thought back to everything that had happened that night. She'd vowed many times to torment the Long Fei Yi, but when she did, she felt like she didn't have enough power to control him. In the end, he still managed to eat her alive. Han Yunshi quickly returned to her room. As usual, she dismissed all the servant girls inside and outside the room. She sat in the wheelchair and looked around the room. The room was empty, and she didn't see that familiar figure. Where is he? She hadn't seen him for the past few times, but he had appeared out of nowhere. Where was he hiding? Han Yunshi's lips curved into a smile as she steeled her heart to find Long Fei. However, just as she was about to look for him, a servant girl came over. "Your Highness, the head elder wants to see you. He said he has something to disturb you about." It was really disturbing to find her room so late at night. Han Yunshi deliberately didn't answer. She waited for the Long Fei Yi to come out and ask her to reject him. However, after waiting for a while, the room was still quiet. Long Fei didn't come? If he was here, with his domineering personality, he would have come out to glare at her and ask her to reject the head elder. Han Yunshi's excited mood seemed to have been splashed with cold water. She suddenly felt down. She said to the servant girl indifferently, "Ask the head elder to wait in the side hall. I'll go over now." Before she left, she turned back to look at the room again. Finally, she left in disappointment. Once she reached the side hall, the head elder strode forward before Han Yunshi could say anything. He knelt down and respectfully presented a token with both hands. The token was made of gold-threaded cedar wood. It was in the shape of a key and tied with a gold-threaded satin. The word D was engraved on the token. Han Yunqi had been looking forward to this token for a long time. She didn't pretend to be shocked, nor did she hypocritically refuse. Instead, she kept silent. "Your Highness, Master Ning is not here. Please preside over the situation for the D clan," the head elder said seriously. Preside over the situation for the D clan? Han Yunqi looked pensive. Just as she was about to probe further, the head elder immediately changed his words. "Myriad Merchant Hall will obey the princess's orders." Han Yunqi picked up the token and smiled faintly. "Head elder, aren't you afraid that Long Fei Yi and I will still be together and waste all the D clan's money?" The head elder smiled embarrassedly. "If the princess really wants to, who can stop you?" Han Yunqi suddenly thought of Ning Cheng. He was young and wasn't as open-minded as the head elder, who was old. That's right. If she wanted to, who could stop her from betraying the heavy responsibility of Western Qin? Why did she have to work so hard to resolve these crises for Myriad Merchant Hall? Why did she have to fight so hard for a just and above-board position? Han Yunqi returned the elder token to the head elder. "If the elder council trusts me, just promise me one thing. Ning Cheng isn't here, so Myriad Merchant Hall's affairs will still be handled by you and the other elders." "I'm just offering a few suggestions." The head elder was very surprised. To put it bluntly, this token was free silver and free authority. With this token in hand, who in the D clan would dare look down on her? Who would dare question her? She didn't want it? "What is it, Your Highness? Please instruct me," the head elder said seriously. "Elder, please use the name of Myriad Merchant Hall's Elder Council to inform Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's Elder Council, the generals and deputy generals of the Ning clan army, that Western Qin will join forces with East Qin to capture Bai Yanqing and rescue Gu Beiwa." Before Han Yunqi could finish, the head elder's expression changed. He exclaimed, "The princess wants to work with East Qin?" Chapter 927. Han Yunqi wanted to cooperate with Long Fei Yi and inform the upper echelons of the D clan's Chamber of Commerce and the military. An open and above-board cooperation. The first elder was flabbergasted. He had never expected that Han Yunqi would make such a request after rejecting the elder's command. Ning Jing had questioned this before, and Han Yunqi had explained it to her. Eastern and Western Qin had stopped fighting because Ning Cheng and Long Fei Yi had reached an agreement to deal with Bai Yanqing first. Long Fei Yi had agreed to stop fighting because he wanted to use Han Yunqi's poison skills to restrain Bai Yanqing. The first elder still had lingering fears from the previous quarrel. He had thought that the matter would be over now that the princess had returned. He had sent people to track down Ning Cheng's whereabouts. However, not only had Han Yunqi brought up the old matter again, but she had also publicly announced that she wanted to cooperate with Long Fei Yi. She wanted the upper echelons of the D clan to know about this. She had even requested to bring up this matter in the name of Myriad Merchant Hall's Elder Assembly. Undoubtedly, she wanted Myriad Merchant Hall to acknowledge her cooperation with Long Fei Yi. A private cooperation was already unacceptable, let alone a public cooperation. The first elder looked at Han Yunqi with a frown and did not say anything for a long time. "Long Fei Yi has a way to lure Bai Yanqing out, and I have a way to restrain Bai Yanqing's poison skills. We can only capture Bai Yanqing if we cooperate," Han Yunqi reminded him. First elder, Bai Yanqing and his master control 90,000 warhorses and 10,000 cavalrymen in Northern Li. If Eastern and Western Qin do not cooperate, will the Feng clan really benefit for nothing? Han Yunqi asked. Seeing that the first elder was still silent, Han Yunqi continued. "First elder, Western Qin and East Qin still have their own version of the reason for the civil war in the Great Qin Empire. Western Qin's imperial family gave the Feng clan full authority to deal with the flood of Sand River, while East Qin's imperial family gave the Black clan to deal with. Have you never doubted the truth of that year? Don't you want to clarify the grudges of that year? Even if each side has its own version, there must be a truth." Han Yunqi was helpless and could only lie. Long Fei Yi has denied the actions of the East Qin Empire in the past, and even slandered my Western Qin's imperial family for ordering the Feng clan to attack the Black Clan's army. Why don't we use this cooperation opportunity to capture Bai Yanqing, and let Bai Yanqing and Long Fei Yi confront each other? We have been enemies with East Qin for all these years. We can't let them frame us for no reason. Han Yunxi did not directly question the truth of the Great Qin Empire Civil War. She used a clever way of speaking, but made the first elder doubt the truth of the past. Seeing that the first elder was a bit shaken, Han Yunxi continued with a strong medicine. She revealed a self-deprecating smile. First elder, why is the difference between a princess and a crown prince so big? Long Fei Yi wants to cooperate with Western Qin. It only takes a single sentence. I, the Western Qin princess. Seeing the first elder's nervous appearance, Han Yunxi fiercely said, I, the Western Qin princess, am at best a puppet. Forget it, forget it. I should go back and properly recover. The matter of recovering the country, wait for your master Ning to come back and make a decision. I won't blindly meddle. After Han Yunxi finished speaking, the first elder broke out in a cold sweat. Han Yunxi was clearly questioning the D clan's loyalty and mocking the D clan's hypocrisy. First elder, it's this late and you should go back. Properly take your elder token. Han Yunxi said this as she turned the wheel to leave. She even said to herself, it's a good thing I know my place and didn't take any elder token. Her voice was not loud, but it was just enough for the first elder to hear. How could the first elder withstand Han Yunxi's self-deprecation? She was mocking the Council of Elders and the D clan with her self-deprecation. She was warning the first elder that if he didn't agree, she wouldn't care and would become a puppet. When a maid sent Han Yunxi to the door, the first elder couldn't help saying, Princess, if you think it's appropriate, this subordinate will do as you say. The first elder thought that if the princess didn't forget the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, Western Qin would cooperate with East Qin. So what? It was necessary to distinguish the truth of the civil war in the past and let the people of the world come to a conclusion. Not to mention that this cooperation was not Western Qin begging the Long Fei Yi, but rather the Long Fei Yi begging their princess for help and needed the princess' poison skills. The first elder comforted himself. Although his heart didn't feel good, he still compromised in the end. All right, I'll send the news tomorrow. I asked the companies and the military to wait for our good news. Han Yunxi honestly said. She had her back to the first elder, and her lips couldn't help curling into a happy smile. She had finally done it. She didn't need to be sneaky anymore, and she could use the name of Western Qin's princess to openly cooperate with the East Qin crown prince, Long Fei Yi. No matter what, she didn't need to hide anymore, and she didn't need to hesitate anymore. She was filled with hope that the conflict between Eastern and Western Qin was just a misunderstanding. If it really was just national enmity and there was no misunderstanding, she was prepared to fight. They had agreed that whether they fought or not, they would live on, because after taking off the heavy responsibility on her shoulders, they still had to be themselves and love each other. She still had to give birth to a dozen babies for Long Fei Yi. She was filled with hope and prepared. Would Long Fei Yi be the same? After the first elder left, Han Yunxi dismissed the maid. She couldn't wait to share this good news with Long Fei Yi. Before the 10-day agreement was up, she had already done it. However, after she entered the room, she remembered that Long Fei Yi hadn't come tonight. Su Donglin had always known her whereabouts. Could it be that Su Donglin didn't tell him that she was already back? Han Yunxi sat in the room for a long time. She almost called Su Donglin, who was guarding outside, to ask him, but she gave up in the end. It was impossible for Su Donglin not to report her whereabouts to Long Fei Yi. There was only one possibility, and that was that he was busy. Looking at the empty room, Han Yunxi was so tired that she didn't want to do anything. She just laid on the table and stared at the teacup in a daze. Although she had accepted the fact that Long Fei Yi hadn't come, she was still secretly waiting in her heart. There was still a bit of hope, and she firmly believed that he would come. However, no matter how long she waited, the room was still silent. Finally, She pressed both hands on the table, stood up carefully, and tried to walk forward. Sure enough, when she took the first step, Long Fei Ye's unhappy voice came from behind her. He said, Han Yunxi, try taking another step forward. She knew it. She knew that he would be here. Sure enough, she had found out. What are you going to do if I take another step forward? Han Yunxi said jokingly. Just as she was about to turn around, Long Fei Yi beat her to it. He strode forward and suddenly wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, hugging her. Han Yunxi also stopped moving. A soundless smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. It was as sweet as honey and bright enough to illuminate the dark, cold night. She said, Long Fei Yi, hug me a little tighter, okay? I missed you. Long Fei Yi moved closer and pulled her into his embrace. They stuck close to each other and felt each other's existence. Is that enough? Long Fei Yi asked. A little tighter, Han Yunxi said gently. However, the two of them really couldn't get any closer. If they got any closer, he would have to knead her into his flesh and blood. He didn't say anything else. He just hugged her and buried his head in her shoulder. Silently, he kissed her jade neck and ears. He was unruffled and greedy. Occasionally, he would deeply inhale the unique fragrance on her body. It was a scent that belonged exclusively to him. 1 day apart felt like 3 years. What about 2 days apart? He couldn't imagine what he would do if he was separated from this woman for a few more days. He had arrived a long time ago and was staring at her to see if she remembered to change her dressing. Sure enough, he caught her again. As Long Fei Ye's kisses became heavier and heavier, and as his arms got closer and closer, Han Yunxi couldn't help but raise her head and close her eyes to feel his gentleness and passion. Even if he was unruffled, he still remembered her injury. He didn't let her stand for too long. Instead, he carried her to the bed and helped her change her dressing. Long Fei Yi, Han Yunxi wanted to say something, but hesitated. She just smiled at him. You've taken down Myriad Merchant Hall? Long Fei Yi asked in return. He knew about Great Elder's arrival and had been watching. Aren't you happy? Han Yunxi asked in return. Only then did Long Fei Yi rub her nose. I'll take you with me tomorrow. We'll go to 100 Poison's sect. I've already made the arrangements. His happiness was well expressed on his face, and he directly put it into action. 100 Poison's sect? Han Yunxi was rather surprised. Surround and attack 100 Poison's sect. Send the poison guards and mercenaries from the City of Daughters over tomorrow. If Bai Yanqing doesn't come out, we'll raise 100 Poison's sect to the ground. Long Fei Yi said. All right. Han Yunxi really hadn't thought about 100 Poison's sect before. That was Bai Yanqing's old nest. They had already provoked Bai Yanqing to the doorstep of his old nest. If Bai Yanqing still acted like a coward, then not only would he be removed from the world, he would also be laughed at by the people in the poison world. He would also be looked down upon by his subordinates. With Bai Yanqing's personality, he definitely wouldn't be able to tolerate this kind of humiliation. Moreover, he was wary of her joining forces with Long Fei Yi. Therefore, Bai Yanqing only had one path to take, and that was to bring Gu Beiwei to 100 Poison's sect to restrain them. Long Fei Yi's move was simply amazing. It was enough to force Bai Yanqing into a corner. Han Yunxi cupped Long Fei Yi's face in her hands and said seriously, You're still the smart one. Long Fei Yi didn't like being close to others since he was young. Even his mother had never cupped his face like this. However, he didn't feel the slightest bit repulsed by Han Yunxi. He allowed her to hold his face. He didn't even mind when she playfully pinched his nose. He focused on applying medicine and bandaging her wound. After treating her wound, Long Fei Yi took out a gold card. 700 million is here. Keep it well. I don't want your money. Han Yunxi said seriously. This was the money to scam Myriad Merchant Hall. However, in a sense, it wasn't a scam. It was just a fee paid by Myriad Merchant Hall to Kingan Bank. If she hadn't come forward, no matter how profitable it was, no matter how much shopkeeper Luo appreciated her proposal, Kingan Bank would never have cooperated with Myriad Merchant Hall. When Myriad Merchant Hall was in trouble, it was already good enough that Kingan Bank didn't kick them when they were down. Therefore, Myriad Merchant Hall owed Long Fei Yi a favor. 700 million to repay Long Fei Yi a favor was truly not a lot. Han Yunxi analyzed the situation for Long Fei Yi, but Long Fei Yi wasn't interested. He asked, "If you don't want money, do you want people?" Why did these words sound so familiar? She seemed to have said them the other night. Long Fei Yi leaned lazily against the high pillow and raised his brows to size up Han Yunxi. Chapter 928. Long Fei Yi's gaze wasn't meaningful at all. It was malicious. Han Yunxi avoided his gaze and coughed lightly, trying to find a topic to talk about. "All right, remember to remind me to get Tang Li out tomorrow." Now that she had a real say in Myriad Merchant Hall, as long as Tang Li was willing to cooperate with her, it would be easy for her to get the Elders Guild to release him. Other matters could be delayed, but Ning Jing's matter couldn't be delayed. If Ning Jing knew about Tang Li's feelings for her, how would she react? Han Yunxi couldn't help but imagine their future. Long Fei Yi appeared to be disinterested in this topic. He answered lazily, Long Fei Yi had no intention of continuing the conversation, so Han Yunxi could only continue to find a topic to talk about. The child was a knot in Long Fei Yi's heart. She wouldn't be so foolish as to continue mentioning Tang Li and Ning Jing. She thought for a moment, then said seriously, "All right, I still have to inform Great Elder about Uncle Cheng's matter tomorrow. If Uncle Cheng doesn't get the money in these 2 days, he'll definitely show his true colors." Han Yunxi didn't rush to settle the score with Uncle Cheng because she was waiting for Uncle Cheng to lose his cool and find trouble with Jia Dai. No matter what, Uncle Cheng was still a senior figure in the D clan. Instead of wasting her efforts to find evidence to bring him down, she might as well let him take the bait and expose himself. Long Fei Yi was still disinterested and nodded dispiritedly. Han Yunxi changed the topic again. "Long Fei Yi, there's still no news from Gu. Could he?" Before she could finish, Long Fei Yi interrupted her forcefully. "Han Yunxi, I don't like you mentioning other people's names on the bed, especially Gu." Han Yunxi really wanted to tell him not to talk to her on the bed next time. Unfortunately, she didn't have the chance to say it. Long Fei Yi quickly used his actions to tell her that she could only call him by his name on the bed. "Long Fei Yi, you bastard. Long Fei Yi, no, not here. Long Fei Yi, that's enough. That's enough. Long Fei Yi, you don't." These screams were ecstatic. However, Long Fei Yi was only tickling Han Yunxi. Although Han Yunxi's legs had recovered quite a bit, it was still inconvenient. Moreover, she couldn't resist the strength of Long Fei Yi's hands. Not long after, she lay under Long Fei Yi and raised her hands in surrender. I was wrong. Please forgive me." Judging from her tone, she didn't sound like she was admitting her mistake and surrendering. It was obvious that she had no choice. Long Fei Yi was expressionless as he looked down at her. "Beg me." Han Yunxi had a lot of backbone. She turned her head away with a snort. Long Fei Yi narrowed his eyes and licked the corner of his lips as he stared at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi could feel the dangerous aura, but she refused to comply. She could feel his hot breath getting closer and closer. She knew that he was leaning close to her, so she simply closed her eyes. Seeing this, the desire to conquer in Long Fei Yi's eyes intensified. Suddenly, he pressed down on Han Yunxi's arm with one hand and used the other hand to attack her armpit. Han Yunxi was so frightened that she had goosebumps all over her body. She was most afraid of Long Fei Yi scratching her armpit. Long Fei Yi's hand only wandered around and didn't really scratch her. Han Yunxi was already glaring at him. "Let go, you're bullying me." It would have been better if she didn't say anything. The more dissatisfied she was, the more excited he became and suddenly scratched her. Han Yunxi screamed. Her voice was really too miserable to hear. Su Donglin, who was guarding outside the courtyard, couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, the maids had retreated, otherwise the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if absence makes the heart grow fonder, there was no need to be like this. Did His Highness have to torture the princess to this extent? "Are you begging or not?" Long Fei Yi asked again. Han Yunxi was scratched until tears came out of her eyes. Her watery eyes were filled with stubbornness, making her look even more lovely and moving. "I'm not begging. Even if I die, I won't beg." "Very good." Long Fei Yi had never been so competitive with a woman before. Han Yunqi was the first and only one. He had once attacked her, but this time, he didn't just tickle her once. Once he started, he didn't stop. Let go. Ah, Long Fei Yi, let go. Haha, that's enough. Let go of me, I'm going to get angry. Long Fei Yi, you're too hateful. Let go, you're bullying me. Woo-woo. Long Fei Yi, I'm going to cry. Han Yunqi seemed to have gone crazy. She laughed, cried, shouted, and screamed. She wasn't even willing to say the word beg. She struggled hard with both hands and twisted her body to avoid him. She didn't know if Long Fei Yi was soft-hearted or if he was careless, but she actually managed to break free of her hands. He only stopped when she hurriedly pulled on his hands. The two of them looked at each other. Han Yunqi was panting while Long Fei Yi was calm and patient. Even if she managed to break free, it would be easy for him to restrain her again. He didn't make a move immediately and waited for her to speak. Han Yunqi glared at him and gritted her teeth. She seemed to be hesitating. Seeing this, Long Fei Yi became even more patient and waited. As expected, Han Yunqi opened her mouth. Long Fei Yi, yeah. He couldn't help but laugh. Unexpectedly, she changed the topic and said, "Why don't you beg me?" Just like the previous time, she suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed him against her chest. She caressed his face, neck, and back gently and gradually helped him undress. At first, he didn't move and just buried his head in her body. But gradually, he didn't want to be outdone. He didn't even need to look at her and easily removed her clothes. The word beg had already been thrown to the back of his mind. He closed his eyes and kissed her gently. He easily fell into her beauty. However, he soon touched that scar and sobered up immediately. He looked up and saw that there was a deep bite mark on Han Yunqi's chest. What's going on? His face immediately darkened. Before Han Yunqi could answer, he pressed her down and said angrily, Han Yunqi, what exactly happened? He had bitten her here and left a bite mark, but it wasn't deep at all. It definitely wouldn't leave a scar. How did this scar come about? Seeing Long Fei Yi's violent and overflowing anger, Han Yunqi then realized that this guy might have misunderstood. How did this scar come about? Who else could it be other than him? Who else could it be? Han Yunqi couldn't help but laugh. I asked Mu Linger for some medicine so that you'll be punished for the crime of bullying a disabled person like me. Long Fei Yi's ashen face finally calmed down a little. He was about to lose to this woman. She had stirred up his 7 emotions and 6 desires, and even controlled his happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. So much so that a misunderstanding could destroy his usually hard heart. He gently caressed the scar and looked at it seriously. He said gently, Han Yunqi, I admit to this crime. Han Yunqi smiled. All right, seeing that you have a good attitude when admitting to your crime, I'll lighten the punishment. I'll punish you. Han Yunqi's voice also unconsciously softened. Long Fei Yi, I'll punish you to love me forever. Do you accept? I accept. The scar on Long Fei Yi's hand was so similar to Han Yunqi's, as if they were a match made in heaven. He was lost in his thoughts when Han Yunqi hugged him and pulled him down. She whispered in his ear, submitting herself to him. Long Fei Yi, I beg you, love me. The night was silent. The moon was hazy, the land of tenderness, the drunken hibiscus. Nothing was known. The next morning, when Long Fei Yi woke up, Han Yunqi was still asleep. He didn't leave cautiously like before, but woke Han Yunqi up. I'll wait for you at the entrance of the black market in the afternoon, Long Fei Yi said seriously. Although he couldn't wait to take her away from the 3-way black market, Long Fei Yi still gave Han Yunqi enough time to deal with myriad merchant hall's troublesome matters. Han Yunqi immediately woke up. After Long Fei Yi left, she ordered the servant girls to tidy up and immediately rushed to the prison. She could finally rescue Tang Li, the sect head Tang. Tang Li hadn't seen Han Yunqi for 2 days. The moment he saw her, he almost knelt down. Sister-in-law, why are you only here now? How's Ning Jing these few days? Is she better? Is she still taking medicine? Does she still feel uncomfortable? Does she vomit? Is it swollen? Can she sleep at night? How about during the day? Does she feel sleepy during the day? Under Han Yunqi's incredulous gaze, he asked a bunch of questions. In the end, he even asked, "Is my daughter obedient?" Tang Li had completely refreshed Han Yunqi's understanding of him. "You know a lot," Han Yunqi said very seriously. "How is she?" Tang Li was burning with anxiety. "How do you know she's pregnant with a daughter?" Han Yunqi asked again. Tang Li didn't answer, nor did he ask Han Yunqi. He simply begged her, "Sister-in-law, can you think of a way for me to see her? Just once. I'll sneak out and come back. It'll only take a while. No one will find out." Han Yunqi shook her head. "Sorry, I can't do that." Tang Li was furious. "I want to see my brother." He didn't have the ability to escape, but his brother definitely had the ability to get him out. Even if it exposed the relationship between the Tang sect and the East Qin imperial family, he wouldn't hesitate. In any case, he didn't expect to get any benefits from Ning Jing, nor did he want to make things difficult for Ning Jing to trick the D clan. He only had one thought now, and that was to take Ning Jing home and take care of the baby. He was going to be a father. Looking at the nearly crazy Tang Li, Han Yunqi couldn't help but wonder how Long Fei Yi would react if she got pregnant one day. "Sister-in-law," Tang Li begged. He was just short of kidnapping Han Yunqi to threaten those archers. "Your brother won't help you either. If you want to get out, you just have to agree to one of my conditions." Han Yunqi smiled. Tang Li immediately shut his mouth and waited for Han Yunqi to continue. Han Yunqi lowered her voice and whispered into his ear. Only then did Tang Li know what Han Yunqi had been doing at Myriad Merchant Hall these days. "So they'll listen to you?" Tang Li asked seriously. "They'll listen to me for such a big matter, let alone a small matter like yours," Han Yunqi said with a smile. "This isn't a small matter." Tang Li looked aggrieved. Han Yunqi had lost to him. Okay. This is also a big matter. I'll go find the Great Elder now." Go. Tang Li's attitude was no different from chasing someone away. Han Yunqi realized for the first time that this was the joy of being a father. Seeing Tang Li so happy made her feel great. After Han Yunqi left the prison cell, she went to find a Great Elder, but... Chapter 929. Before Han Yunqi reached the Council of Elders, a maidservant in green came looking for her. Princess, something bad has happened." The maidservant in green was extremely pale. This maidservant in green had been bribed by Han Yunqi to serve Ning Jing in her courtyard. Han Yunqi's heart grew flustered. If anything happened to Ning Jing and her daughter, how was she going to explain it to Tang Li? "What happened?" Han Yunqi asked. "Miss Jing and Miss Mu Ling have disappeared. Qian, who was serving them in the room, has been killed." The maidservant in green was so frightened that her lips and teeth were still trembling. "I was just about to bring in the food when I saw Qian lying on the ground. There was no one on the bed. I immediately went to look for Miss Ling, but Miss Ling was also not in the side room." Han Yunqi thought that the worst-case scenario was that something had happened to Ning Jing's body, but she never expected things to be this bad. Ning Jing needed to be bedridden. Could she still hold on after being kidnapped? The maidservant had been killed, and Ning Jing and Mu Ling had disappeared. This was clearly a kidnapping. Han Yunqi's hands were cold, but she still calmed down and instructed, "Go and inform the Council of Elders immediately. Also, don't divulge anything about Ning Jing. Otherwise, be careful of your life." Han Yunqi had the maidservant quickly push her to Ning Jing's courtyard to inspect the scene. To be able to kill people and kidnap people in Myriad Merchant Hall without a sound, it was definitely not simple. It was either an expert or a mole. When Han Yunqi rushed over, First Elder and the others had just arrived. When they saw the corpse in the room, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Fifth Elder was about to examine the corpse when Han Yunqi stopped him. "Don't touch it. Someone, go and find a coroner." First Elder understood Han Yunqi's meaning. Han Yunqi knew a little about forensic science, but it was safer to leave unprofessional things to a coroner. While they were waiting for the coroner, Han Yunqi took the initiative to ask the maidservant about the situation in the courtyard since yesterday. Under the reminder of Han Yunqi's eyes again and again, the flustered maidservant finally didn't spill the beans about Ning Jing's pregnancy. According to the clues provided by the maidservant, Ning Jing and Mu Linger were still there last night. It was very likely that they were kidnapped between night and dawn. Mu Linger was responsible for preparing medicine for Ning Jing and lived in the side room. Ning Jing was recuperating in a master bedroom. The maid who was killed was the maid who kept watch at night. Soon, the coroner arrived. After a thorough examination, he confirmed that the maidservant had been killed in the middle of the night. She was killed with a single stab, and there were no signs of struggle before she died. It must be a mole, Han Yunqi said seriously. There were many guards on night patrol in Myriad Merchant Hall, and Ning Jing's courtyard was also surrounded by guards who specialized in night patrol. If it wasn't a mole who was familiar with this place, how could they silently sneak in to kill and take away Ning Jing and Mu Linger without anyone noticing? There can't be a mole in Myriad Merchant Hall. Second Elder said angrily. Even if there's a mole, what's the point of kidnapping Miss Jing? Although Third Elder wasn't as agitated as Second Elder, he agreed with this point of view. Your Highness, Miss Jing hasn't been in charge for a long time. Now that she's sick, if there's a mole, they should know that kidnapping her won't be a threat to the D clan. Could it be someone from the Tang sect? First Elder asked suspiciously. Han Yunqi countered, if it was someone from the Tang sect, why did they only kidnap Ning Jing? Why didn't they rescue Tang Li? Second Elder said righteously, they probably didn't find Tang Li. Han Yunqi couldn't help but roll her eyes. She actually hoped that it was the Tang sect who kidnapped them. Then everything would be easier. But how could it be the Tang sect who kidnapped them? Those elders of the Tang sect still didn't know that Tang Li was imprisoned in Myriad Merchant Hall. They only thought that Tang Li had brought Ning Jing to East Origin Hall to play. Moreover, even if they wanted to take action, they wouldn't be so bold as to hide it from Long Fei Yi. Second Elder, aren't you overestimating the Tang sect too much? Could it be that Myriad Merchant Hall's defenses are so weak that the Tang sect can kill and kidnap people without anyone noticing? Han Yunqi said mockingly. Second Elder immediately shut his mouth. Third Elder said, Your Highness, if there is a mole, who is it? Why did they kidnap Miss Jing? Han Yunqi was shocked when she heard this. She blurted out, Uncle Chung. Uncle Chung? How is that possible? Everyone was confused. Han Yunqi anxiously asked, First Elder, where's Uncle Chung? Your Highness, even if there is a mole, it can't be Uncle Chung. When we returned yesterday, Uncle Chung left halfway. He went to the south to hire a new dealer. First Elder reminded her. Han Yunqi shook her head. She silently cursed herself for being too careless. She had underestimated Uncle Chung too much. In her panic, Han Yunqi almost blurted out Jia Dai's story. Fortunately, she stopped herself in time. She couldn't explain it clearly. If she could, she would have done so long ago. She couldn't tell the Council of Elders that she and Jia Dai knew each other, and that they had colluded to harm Uncle Chung and Myriad Merchant Hall. Could she? When she discussed the matter with Long Fei last night, all she wanted to do was beat around the bush to remind the head elder of a few things. Now, what should she do? Uncle Chung. Uncle Chung. Han Yunqi changed the topic. I don't suspect Uncle Chung. What I mean is that we hurry up and find Uncle Chung. With such a major incident, whether it's a mole or an external enemy, it shows that Myriad Merchant Hall's defenses are too weak. Third Elder and Fourth Elder should shoulder the burden of the casino. Let Uncle Chung come back to handle this. Han Yunqi's words were not as smooth as she usually was. Fortunately, the elders didn't sense anything strange. After all, this was a major incident at Myriad Merchant Hall. It was normal for them to be nervous. Princess is right. Men, hurry up and find Uncle Chung. Tell him that something big has happened here. Tell him to come back quickly. First Elder immediately gave the order. Han Yunqi was relieved. She thought that if Uncle Chung didn't kidnap them, then her and Jia Dai's plan would go on as usual. If Uncle Chung really did kidnap them, then Uncle Chung would definitely follow up. In this way, the Council of Elders would naturally suspect him. No matter why the kidnappers had kidnapped Ning Jing and Mu Linger, Han Yunqi only hoped that Ning Jing and the child at her belly were safe. Your Highness, why don't we bring Tang Li here and test him? The Tang sect should give us an explanation about the pear-flower storm needles. First elder said. Han Yunxi couldn't imagine whether Tang Li would go crazy if he knew that Ning Jing was missing. She should give Tang Li a heads up in private. However, at this juncture, it would be difficult for her to go to the prison in private. She could only hope that Tang Li wouldn't be too impulsive. Han Yunxi hid her worries and uneasiness in her heart. She said lightly, "It's time to deal with it. Bring him to the council chamber." Tang Li, who knew nothing about everything, was very obedient and well-behaved. He let the guard tie him up and didn't resist at all. After being brought to the council chamber, he found an opportunity when no one was paying attention and even winked at Han Yunxi naughtily. A few days ago, Han Yunxi clearly felt that Brother Tang Li had grown up. However, at this moment, she found that he was as silly as a child. Han Yunxi's heart ached at the sight of Tang Li, who'd lost so much weight that he was almost unrecognizable and tied up. "Ning Jing, where are you? Do you miss your Ollie?" "Sect Master Tang, please take a seat." The first elder still prepared a chair for Tang Li. Tang Li's legs were tied up, so he could only hop over and sit down. He sneered, "Haha, so the D clan still has manners of hospitality." Several elders were about to fly into a rage, but the first elder stopped them with a look. He said, "Sect Master Tang, you've been missing for so many days. The Tang clan should be anxious. Does it mean that First Elder is planning to let me go?" Tang Li's face became serious. "You have to return the money that my wife and I won. Otherwise, I won't leave." The First Elder's expression changed when he said this. On the other hand, the servant girls at the side secretly covered their mouths and laughed. Han Yunxi couldn't laugh. She said, "Sect Master Tang, if you don't give the D clan an explanation for the Pearflower Storm Needles, don't even think about getting a single penny, let alone leaving this place." Tang Li's mouth twitched. "Where's Ning Jing? Call her out. The Pearflower Storm Needles was my betrothal gift to her. If there's an explanation, it should be to her." Tang Li raised his eyebrows and swept a glance at everyone. He asked disdainfully, "Who do you think you are? Did you ask for Ning Jing's permission before taking her betrothal gift?" Ning Jing's betrothal gift should naturally be received by the Ning clan's patriarch. The first elder immediately retorted. The Ning clan's patriarch was naturally Ning Cheng. "Fine, hand over Ning Cheng as well. I'll explain it to you and your sister." Tang Li naturally knew about Ning Cheng's disappearance. The first elder couldn't get either Ning Cheng or Ning Jing to come out. Tang Li's words more or less dispelled third elder and fourth elder's suspicions about the Tang clan's kidnapping. The first elder looked at Han Yunxi, imploring her to preside over the situation. "Sect Master Tang, this princess can represent the D clan's patriarch. If you can give a clear explanation today, this princess will let you go." The moment Han Yunxi said this, the first elder and the others all looked over. Han Yunxi gave them a reassuring look and continued to say to Tang Li, "If you can't give a clear explanation, then don't blame this princess for being impolite." Han Yunxi was paving the way for Tang Li. Tang Li deliberately sized up Han Yunxi. After a while, he said, "Fine, this sect master will give face to the Western Qin princess." Tang Li was silent for a while before speaking. His attitude actually softened. He said, "First Elder, this junior has a question to ask. I wonder if you can enlighten me." The first elder was on guard. "Let's hear it." "First Elder, if you were drugged and raped by a woman, how would you deal with that woman?" Tang Li's words were very serious, but the entire crowd fell silent. After a while, everyone except the first elder burst into laughter. Some couldn't help but laugh out loud, while others forced themselves to stifle their laughter. Han Yunxi looked at Tang Li with a helpless smile. The first elder didn't answer, so Tang Li asked again, "First Elder, would you kill that woman or marry her and torture her slowly?" The first elder still didn't answer, but Tang Li didn't press him. He said, "Cloud Realm Trade Consortium is rich and imposing with a large business. My Tang clan can't afford to provoke them. Fortunately, Miss Jing was willing to marry me, Tang Li, and give me a chance to wash away my humiliation." Hearing this, no one could laugh anymore. Everyone assumed that after Tang Li said this, Ning Jing would be tortured daily by Tang Li after marrying into the Tang clan. She would be forced to live an inhumane life. Only Han Yunxi knew that Tang Li was the one being tortured, ordered around, beaten, and cursed every day. Ning Jing was like a queen, being held, protected, and given in by Tang Li. Being spoiled by others required opportunities and good fortune. However, being willing to spoil others required opportunities as well. Han Yunxi didn't even know if Tang Li would have a chance to continue being bullied by Ning Jing. She quietly listened to Tang Li's confession. That's right, Tang Li wasn't explaining, but confessing. Chapter 9:30. Tang Li wasn't explaining that the pear blossom storm needles was faked. He was clearly confessing. Unfortunately, Ning Jing wasn't present, so Ning Jing couldn't hear it. Tang Li asked the second elder, "Old man, do you know how to torture a woman?" The second elder clenched his fists and was about to scold Tang Li for bullying a woman, which wasn't what a man should do. Who knew that Tang Li would say, "Make her fall in love with you, make her unable to leave you, and then make her scram." As soon as he said this, the entire place fell silent. Everyone looked at Tang Li in disbelief. Tang Li looked at the third elder. "Old man, has a woman ever loved you? Why does she love you?" The third elder looked embarrassed and avoided Tang Li's gaze. Tang Li asked again, "Do you know what kind of flowers your wife likes? What kind of cloth does she like to wear? What are the flavors of her 3 meals? What does Xiao Dian like to eat? Which shop's jewelry and rouge does she like? What size shoes does she wear? What kind of fragrance does she like to use for baths? How long will she laze in bed? Will her anger dissipate after being angry for a long time?" As Tang Li spoke, he smiled to himself and continued, "What are the days of the month when her temper is the worst?" The entire place fell silent. Several elders lowered their heads. It wasn't clear whether they were embarrassed or ashamed. Han Yunxi couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi. She suddenly missed him very much. Long Fei Yi knew everything about her, no matter how big or small. None of the servant girls were smiling now. They were all looking at Tang Li with adoring gazes. How could they have thought that the dignified Tang sect master would care about so many small things? How much did a man have to love a woman to be willing to spend time and effort to understand these things? Actually, love wasn't high and mighty. It wasn't above the common populace. Love was built up from many trivial things in daily life. The more trivial it was, the more beautiful it was. I know, over the past year, Tang Li's tolerance and compromises, Tang Li's doting and shielding of his own people were needless to say, and Ning Jing's unruly, crafty, mean, and cruel ways were also needless to say. With just one sentence, "I know everything," it was enough to show how much Tang Li had done, how much he had paid attention to, and how much he had understood in the past year. Everyone looked at him, waiting for him to continue. However, he ended the confession with one sentence. He said, "Unfortunately, I can't torture Ning Jing. She hasn't fallen in love with me yet, but I can't leave her." This kind of farewell was simple and real, yet beautiful and dreamy. Why couldn't Ning Jing hear it? Tang Li looked at Han Yunxi and asked seriously, "Han Yunxi, long before you met Ning Jing, the pear flower storm needles were empty. I used them all when I ran away from my marriage. If I didn't use them at that time, I would have married someone else. I was afraid that I couldn't marry Ning Jing, so I had to fake it. I have nothing to say about this. If Ning Jing doesn't want to go home with me because of this betrothal gift, then you don't have to let me go. Lock me up, and I'll eat and live here. I won't leave." Great Elder looked at Han Yunxi, and Han Yunxi also looked at Great Elder. Because of the disturbance at the casino and auction house, Tang Li's matter had been delayed. Back then, it was also Ning Cheng who instructed Great Elder to put Tang Li and Ning Jing under house arrest. Ning Cheng's original plan was to kidnap Tang Li to threaten the cooperation between the Tang sect and Cloud Realms arms trade, so that Ning Jing wouldn't have to waste time dealing with it. But now the situation had changed. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi still had to cooperate, and the war between Eastern and Western Qin wouldn't start so soon. Ning Cheng wasn't here, and Ning Jing's whereabouts were unknown, so Great Elder didn't dare to make the final decision. Great Elder thought that since Tang Li really liked Ning Jing, it meant that Miss Jing had already succeeded in half. It shouldn't be difficult to facilitate the cooperation between the two sides. Now that the D clan was in trouble, it wasn't good to have another conflict with the Tang sect. It was better to let Tang Li go and tell him about Ning Jing. First, they could ask the Tang sect to help find her. Second, they could maintain their relationship with the Tang sect, which would be easier to talk to in the future. The head elder stepped forward and whispered his thoughts into Han Yunxi's ear. Han Yunxi didn't expect Tang Li to confess like this, but she could guess Great Elder's consideration. She secretly gave Tang Li a look, hoping to give him a hint to calm him down. Tang Li saw Han Yunxi's hint, but she didn't know if he understood her meaning. Han Yunxi said calmly, "Come, untie the Tang sect leader." Tang Li had been holding it in, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. He asked anxiously, "Where's Ning Jing? Where's my wife?" With this clever confession, Tang Li didn't need to hide his love, nor did he need to pretend. Now, he could openly announce to everyone that he liked Ning Jing. He even planned to bring Ning Jing back to the Tang sect and threaten the elders with the child in Ning Jing's belly. He was the only son of the 9th generation of the Tang sect. If those elders, especially his father, dared to touch Ning Jing, he would definitely make them regret it. Hurry up and ask Ning Jing to come out. If she wants a betrothal gift, I'll get to her. When she returns to the Tang sect, she can choose any hidden weapon she wants. Although Ning Jing's choice of hidden weapon was different from the cooperation between the Tang sect and the arms trade, Tang Li's words still made the elders' eyes light up. They were all annoyed. How could they have been so busy recently that they forgot about the Tang sect? If they had interrogated Tang Li earlier, perhaps Tang Li would have brought Ning Jing back to the Tang sect long ago, and the arms trade would have been completed very quickly. Now that Ning Jing was missing, how were they going to explain to Tang Li? Han Yunxi didn't speak for a long time, and the elders also looked at each other. Tang Li, who was feeling happy, finally realized that something was wrong with Han Yunxi. He felt uneasy. What happened to Ning Jing? Or was there something wrong with his child? Tang Li was about to rush over and question her, but he was stopped by Han Yunxi's sharp gaze. Although the elders now believed in Tang Li, who could guarantee that this group of old men wouldn't think too much after Ning Jing's pregnancy was revealed? Ning Jing married into the Tang sect with a mission. If she was pregnant, she must be willing. Previously, when Ning Jing came to the three-way black market wearing a mask, Ning Cheng was already suspicious. If Ning Cheng was present today, Tang Li wouldn't be able to fool around so easily. At this juncture, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Tang Li knew Han Yunxi's concerns. He calmed down and gave Han Yunxi a reassuring look. He knew that if he didn't calm down, Han Yunxi wouldn't say anything. Sect Master Tang, Ning Jing. Ning Jing went missing late last night. Before Han Yunxi could finish speaking, Tang Li rushed over. "What did you say?" Several guards immediately came forward to stop him. Tang Li insisted on grabbing Han Yunxi's collar and questioning her. Su Donglin, who was hiding in the dark, broke out in cold sweat. Han Yunxi's brows were tightly knitted as she stared into Tang Li's eyes. She didn't stop reminding him and said anxiously, "Ning Jing hasn't been feeling well these few days. The doctor wants her to rest quietly. Mu Ling has been accompanying her. Late last night, robbers killed the servant girl in her room and kidnapped her and Mu Ling. The Elders Guild is already investigating. I hope you can stay calm and investigate this matter with the Elders Guild." Han Yunxi emphasized the last sentence. She asked again, Sect Master Tang, if they can sneak into Myriad Merchant Hall and kidnap people. Their martial arts must be good. Have you and Ning Jing offended anyone before this? Han Yunxi had already said so much. If Tang Li still didn't understand, Han Yunxi was at her wit's end. Fortunately, Tang Li still had a bit of rationality left. He looked at Han Yunxi and clenched his fist tightly. After a long time, he calmed down. Our Tang sect has never interfered in worldly affairs. Who could we have offended? However, as for Ning Jing, I don't know who she has offended in the past. Miss Jing previously Head Elder had just opened his mouth when Tang Li angrily rebuked, "Didn't the guards be alarmed by such a big incident last night?" Who was in charge of Myriad Merchant Hall's guards? Tang Li was just asking a normal question. He didn't know about Uncle Cheng's incident. However, unfortunately, Uncle Cheng was in charge of the D clan's defense. Myriad Merchant Hall was no exception. The elders exchanged glances. Although they didn't speak, they all had their own guesses. Head Elder's eyes were complicated. He said, "This matter was indeed due to the guard's negligence. Rest assured, Sect Master Tang, we will do our best to investigate this matter thoroughly. We won't let go of any clues." "Sect Master Tang, please calm down. Since they kidnapped people, they must have a request. Why don't we wait a few days? Perhaps there will be news," Han Yunshi advised. They should rejoice that the kidnappers had only killed the maidservant and taken away Ning Jing and Mu Ling. Otherwise, if the kidnappers had killed Mu Ling and Ning Jing last night, there would be no point in their discussion today. Thinking of this, Han Yunshi couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Her words angered Tang Li even more. He roared angrily, "Han Yunshi, are Myriad Merchant Hall's guards all good-for-nothings?" Tang Li didn't mean it, but Han Yunshi did. She took the opportunity to say to Head Elder, "We must find Uncle Cheng as soon as possible. He must take responsibility for this matter." Head Elder nodded repeatedly. "I've already sent people to search for him. Sect Master Tang, please rest in the guest room. Once there's news, this one will immediately send someone to inform you." "I'll just stay in Ning Jing's courtyard," Tang Li said coldly. Head Elder couldn't wait to end this awkward discussion so that Tang Li could calm down first. He immediately had the maidservant take Tang Li away. Once Tang Li left, Han Yunshi also breathed a sigh of relief. She was about to leave, but something like this happened all of a sudden. How could she leave now? No matter what, Ning Jing and Mu Ling were lost in her hands. Everyone was focused on Ning Jing, and no one mentioned Mu Ling. As for her, not only was she worried about Ning Jing, but she was also worried about Mu Ling. Ning Jing and Mu Ling were in different rooms, but they were both kidnapped. Why? Was it because Mu Ling discovered that Ning Jing was in danger and rushed over to help, but was unable to do so? Or was it because the kidnappers were also planning to kidnap Mu Ling? Although Mu Ling was impulsive and reckless, if it didn't involve her Chi brother, she wouldn't be so foolish and stubborn. If she couldn't beat the kidnappers, she would definitely ask the guards for help. Therefore, Han Yunshi was more willing to believe that the kidnappers were not only targeting Ning Jing, but also Mu Ling. There might be more than one kidnapper. Thinking of this, Han Yunshi suddenly thought of someone. She anxiously asked, "Head Elder, is there any news about Deacon Jean in the past 2 days?" Head Elder didn't pay much attention to this matter. The attendant beside him quickly replied, "Deacon Jean was being chased by Kangon Bank for his debt. The day before yesterday, he hid in Willow Flower Alley. I heard that the people from Kangon Bank are also looking for him." Chapter 9:31. Han Yunshi knew about Willow Flower Lane. It was the most chaotic place in the three-way black market, with all sorts of people. No one could control it, so it was basically a lawless area. Deacon Jean had actually gone there to hide. Just how hard was Kangon Bank pushing him? Long Fei, he didn't need the small amount of money he owed. Han Yunshi thought that Long Fei probably wanted Deacon Jean to be pushed so hard by Kangon Bank, just like her, because of Deacon Jin's background. At this time, Han Yunshi didn't have time to think about this matter. Saving people was more important. Send someone to look for him and spread the word that if he's willing to come back, Myriad Merchant Hall will help him pay off his debt. Han Yunshi said seriously. This First Elder hesitated. The Council of Elders was stingy to begin with, not to mention that the D clan's finances were tight. If the robbers are only after Ning Jing, then they can just kill Mu Ling. Why take Mu Ling away as well? Han Yunshi asked seriously. First Elder finally realized this. "You mean that Deacon Jean is here to seek revenge on Mu Ling? But Deacon Jean and Miss Jing have no grudges. Why take Miss Jing away?" Fifth Elder hurriedly said. There should be more than one robber. It's only a guess now. Hurry and spread the word. See if Deacon Jean comes. Han Yunshi said seriously. Now that they didn't have a single clue, they could only wait for the robbers to come and extort them while using the elimination method to investigate all possible suspects. Just as they were talking, someone from the auction hall came to deliver news of victory. This was the only consolation in the midst of all the troubles. The elders were very gratified and had more trust and expectations for Han Yunshi. The casino and auction hall can't be delayed, especially the reopening of the casino. Third elder and fourth elder will cooperate fully. We must reopen the casino as soon as possible. Everything in the auction went smoothly, and the second elder handled everything by himself. The fifth elder was in charge of handling Ning Jing's matter, so he had to calm sect Master Tang down. Great elder, there is still no news of Ning Cheng. Don't forget about this matter. Han Yunshi assigned the focus of the work and let the fifth elder deal with Ning Jing, which could save her a lot of trouble. Moreover, with the fifth elder's temper, he would soon suspect Uncle Cheng. After everything was settled, everyone went about their own business. Han Yunshi immediately went to see Tang Li. At this moment, Tang Li was sitting on Ning Jing's couch, stroking the pillow and silk quilt that she had used before, savoring the fragrance that she had left behind. When Han Yunshi came in, she saw Tang Li clutching the silk blanket tightly and pressing it under his nose. After everything was exposed in Medical City, he had never hugged her again. Tang Li didn't even notice Han Yunshi coming in. He was immersed in longing and self-blame. He had already given in so many times. Why couldn't he give in a few more times? If he had given in a few more times and told her that he liked her, they wouldn't have fallen to this point. Han Yunshi came to the bedside and looked at Tang Li's pained face. She remained silent. At this time, any comforting words that were too pleasant to hear were pale and powerless. After a long time, Tang Li murmured, "Sister-in-law, how many times do I have to give in before Ning Jing and I could be together?" He was willing to give in to her and the D clan. Han Yunshi smiled bitterly. She and Long Fei Yi had been moving forward all this time, trying their best to complete the 100 steps. However, Tang Li and Ning Jing were giving in. Tang Li gave in. Ning Jing was pregnant. Ning Jing betrayed Ning Cheng. Ning Jing wanted to escape from the D clan. Why didn't they give in? Don't think too much. Ning Jing is very smart. As long as the kidnappers have a request, she will definitely be able to turn misfortune into blessings. Han Yunshi wasn't comforting him. She was speaking the truth. Han Yunshi then analyzed Uncle Cheng and Deacon Jin's suspicions in detail for Tang Li. She instructed, "I will arrange for fifth elder to be fully in charge of this. You must stay calm and cooperate with him." Tang Li looked up. "Sister-in-law, I'm scared of the child." Before he could finish speaking, Han Yunshi coldly interrupted him. "Enough. Don't hide here and be afraid. No matter what the situation is, let's find them first. What's the use of being afraid here? If you were afraid, why did you let Ning Jing get pregnant in the first place?" Pregnancy was never something that could be done by one person's will alone. If Tang Li didn't bully anyone, would Ning Jing have a chance? Han Yunshi's words were very unpleasant and grating. However, these were the only words that could truly wake Tang Li up. Tang Li fiercely jabbed his face and stood up decisively. "I will go to Willow Flower Alley now. I am familiar with that place. Ever since Long Fei Yi took charge of East Origin Hall, Tang Li often went to Willow Flower Alley. When he went to find people, he was much more efficient than the people sent by Myria Merchant Hall." Han Yunshi secretly sighed. She was now hoping that Ning Jing and the others had been kidnapped by Deacon Jean. Deacon Jean only wanted money. Things that could be settled with money were much simpler. Tang Li was about to leave when Han Yunshi hurriedly stopped him. "Your brother is in East Origin Hall. If you need help, go find him. Also, help me pass a message. Just say that there has been a change in the plan. Ask him to wait a few more days for me." Hearing this, Tang Li turned back and said seriously, "Sister-in-law, regarding the 100 Poisons sect matter, you all will act according to plan. You don't have to worry about me." Han Yunshi couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. She waved her hand and told him to leave quickly. However, Tang Li became stubborn. Sister-in-law, this is my own matter. You and my brother don't have to worry about it. I won't drag you all down. Han Yunqi rolled her eyes at him. You're thinking too much. Since you've come out, you'll have to take responsibility for Ning Jing's matter. The one I want to save is that damn girl Mu Ling. Of course, Tang Li knew that she was speaking out of anger. Thus, he also said harshly, Sister-in-law, you want to drag my brother down again for Mu Ling? You want my brother to wait again? Do you know that as long as the grudge between Eastern and Western Qin is not resolved, my brother won't be able to sleep peacefully? Can't you spare a thought for my brother's sake? Tang Li only wanted to provoke Han Yunqi. How could he know what kind of unhappiness Han Yunqi had with Long Fei Yi? Han Yunqi couldn't help but think of Long Fei Yi's lonely eyes. She asked Tang Li indifferently, do you think so too? Tang Li had never seen Han Yunqi look so pitiful. He wondered if anyone else had scolded her like this before. Since he had already provoked her, Tang Li was determined to be the villain to the end. He asked, don't you think so too? Sister-in-law, my brother has never waited for anyone. After he met you, do you know how many things have been delayed because of you? My brother dotes on you, so you should feel sorry for him too. At first, Tang Li did it on purpose, but as he spoke, he began to recall memories of his childhood. He muttered to himself, Sister-in-law, my big brother's never had anyone dote on him since he was young. I even thought he'd never know how to dote on someone in this lifetime. I never thought that he would dote on you this much. Han Yunqi could guess that Long Fei Yi's childhood wasn't good. She had asked before, but Long Fei Yi wasn't willing to talk about it. Tang Li, how did Long Fei Yi's father and mother pass away? Han Yunqi asked in a low voice. Because of the perplexing butterfly illusion, Tang Li didn't avoid it. He felt that there were some things that Han Yunqi should know. It had to be said that he had his own selfish motives. He was biased towards his brother and East Qin. If Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi caught by yanching on this trip and confronted each other about the grudges of the past, they would really meet on the battlefield. He hoped that Han Yunqi would give in and show mercy. Perplexing butterfly illusion? How did Consort one get her hands on it? Han Yunqi grew nervous. The perplexing butterfly illusion was the poison sect's long-lost treasure, something that everyone was fighting over. Even Bai Yanqing was searching for it. So how did Consort one get her hands on it? There were rumors back then that the perplexing butterfly illusion had reappeared in the poison sect, causing countless people in the poison world to fight over it. Many remnants of the poison sect also flocked to the poison sect. Medical City did their best to hide this matter, but it was useless, Tang Li said indifferently. So they went looking for the perplexing butterfly illusion too? Han Yunqi asked. Tang Li shook his head helplessly. Uncle and Aunt Wan have been searching for the perplexing butterfly illusion for a long time. When Aunt Wan was in charge of the Tang sect's poison sect, she studied its history and discovered records of the perplexing butterfly illusion. She and Uncle found a few poison masters to go with them to the poison sect. It took them 3 years to find the perplexing butterfly illusion. One of the poison masters who went with them betrayed Aunt Wan and leaked information about the perplexing butterfly illusion, causing a huge commotion in the poison world. Han Yunqi couldn't believe it. This was the first time she'd heard about Long Fei Yi's parents. So, when the poison world flocked to the poison sect, the perplexing butterfly illusion was already in Consort Wan's hands. Tang Li nodded. Many people in the Tang sect and the Bailey army believe that Uncle died from injuries. Some say he fell ill. Actually, very few people know the true cause of Uncle's death. You know, Han Yunqi grew nervous. They found the perplexing butterfly illusion in a cave back then. Uncle was injured by the poisonous gas it sprayed out. Tang Li sucked in a deep breath. His body was never found. The Tang sect's reclining dragon peak is actually a cenotaph. Han Yunqi's heart suddenly clenched. Then Consort one. Aunt Wan was by Uncle's side back then. She saw him die with her own eyes. Tang Li's voice was choked with emotion. He remembered his mother crying the entire time she told him this. Aunt Wan's personality changed drastically after she came back. She placed all her hopes of reviving the empire on my brother. In those years, she practically trained my brother as a death warrior. Later on, she committed suicide, Tang Li said indifferently. Han Yunxi recalled the scars on Long Fei Ye's body and felt her heart clench. If Tang Li hadn't said anything, how could she have imagined that someone like him would go through such torture? Han Yunxi had pitted Consort 1 just a moment ago, but now Han Yunxi hated her to the core. What was a death warrior's training? That was to disregard all consequences and be prepared to die. They had to undergo high-intensity, high-difficulty training. That was no different from forcing someone to their death. How old was Long Fei back then? However, Tang Li's next words caused Han Yunxi to break down even more. Tang Li said, "Aunt Wan committed suicide in front of my brother. I was there at the time, too. She said a few words to my brother." "Is she crazy?" Han Yunxi roared. "Maybe," Tang Li said indifferently. Han Yunxi didn't want to hear any more, but she had to. She had to understand everything that happened back then. That was Long Fei Ye's past. Chapter 9:32. Before Consort 1 killed herself, she left Long Fei Yi with 2 words. One was, "Fei, remember how your imperial father and I died." The other was, "Fei, remember the meaning of your life." After Tang Li fell silent, Han Yunxi's heart ached so much that she couldn't breathe. She couldn't imagine how much Long Fei Yi had endured. It wasn't a burden on his shoulders, but in his heart. Only by knowing how much he'd suffered would she know how much he'd conceded. Only then would she know how much he'd struggled and suffered when he chose to accept her, love her, and hide her identity from her. But he hadn't mentioned a word about any of it. It was as if none of it had ever happened, and she knew nothing about it. Compared to her responsibilities as the princess of Western Qin, Long Fei Ye's burden was a true inner torment. Seeing Han Yunxi's red eyes, Tang Li realized he'd said too much. He was about to speak when Han Yunxi grabbed his sleeve and said, "Tang Li, I'll leave Ning Jing and Mu Ling to you. And don't tell your big brother that I know so much." Thank goodness this woman was still rational. Tang Li exhaled. "Understand. Don't worry and go." Han Yunxi didn't send anyone else to tell Long Fei Yi to change the time. She gave herself an hour to calm down and collect her emotions. Once she'd buried all her pain in her heart, she left to take care of myriad merchant hall's affairs. "Head Elder, have you notified everyone about the alliance?" Han Yunxi asked. "I've already discussed it with the elders yesterday. It's better to wait until after the princess leaves." "Princess, please don't worry. The Council of Elders will take care of everything below," the head elder said seriously. Han Yunxi relaxed at his words. A complicated look flickered past her eyes before she said, "After notifying everyone, spread the news as well. I want all of Cloud Realm Continent to know that East and West Qin are working together." The great elder hesitated. Han Yunxi coldly said, "If we don't take this chance to confront East Qin, could it be we'll let East Qin keep slandering our Western Qin royal family? I want the world to know that the civil war in the Great Qin Empire was not the fault of Western Qin." Influenced by Han Yunxi's imposing manner, First Elder also became excited. "Yes, this subordinate will do as you say." What the First Elder didn't know was that Han Yunxi had already made a very ruthless decision. "Princess, about Ning Jing," the Great Elder asked tentatively. According to the D clan's rules and style, Ning Jing's matters weren't as important as the Wind clan's. Even if Ning Jing's life was in danger, the Wind clan's matters were still the priority. But the Great Elder still hadn't figured out the princess's style or temperament after spending time with her. More importantly, it wasn't just Ning Jing who was missing, but Mu Ling as well. Thus, he didn't dare to act on his own and could only test the waters. Ning Jing's matters have already been handed over to Fifth Elder. Keep an eye on him and have him cooperate with the Tang clan head. I've already made an appointment with Long Fei Yi. We'll set out in the afternoon, Han Yunxi said seriously. "Princess, please be careful. This subordinate has arranged for 2 guards to protect you," the Great Elder said. Han Yunxi didn't refuse, but said, wait by the door. There were still 2 more hours before Long Fei's appointment, but Han Yunxi had already taken care of everything. If this was the past, she'd definitely take a bath and prepare some dry rations before leaving the house. But how could she have the mind to do that? She wanted to see that man immediately and tightly hug him. How could he not tell her anything? Did he want to hide it from her forever? How could he bear this much? Being separated from Long Fei Yi so many times, even being separated for several months, it didn't feel as bad as these 2 hours. Han Yunxi sat in the wheelchair, sitting alone in the room. She was waiting for news, waiting for him to send someone to pick her up. She already couldn't calmly think about anything. Finally, there was a knock on the door. "Your Highness, the East Qin Crown Prince has sent someone over." Han Yunxi suddenly looked up and saw the door open. Standing at the door was no one else but Su Donglin. "Princess of Western Qin, please." Su Donglin was neither servile nor overbearing as he rushed to push Han Yunxi's wheelchair before the servant girls could. The great elder waited on one side. As soon as Han Yunxi left the room, he signaled for the 2 guards to follow her. They escorted her all the way to the back door before he spoke. "Your Highness, take care. Don't worry. Long Fei, you won't dare to act rashly when everyone in the world knows." Han Yunxi even gave the great elder a bewitching potion before she left. Most likely, he'd spread the news of the alliance between East and Western Qin to every corner of Cloud Realm continent very soon. The 5th elder and the 4th elder also came to see him off. In front of Su Donglin, they remained silent and did not say anything. At the back door, all of the elders stopped. Su Donglin escorted Han Yunxi to her carriage while the 2 guards followed them all the way to the 3-way Black Market's west gate. Han Yunxi finally saw the familiar carriage. It was a large and sturdy carriage parked there with Gao Bohu on one side. Long Fei, you should be inside. Behind the large carriage were 2 smaller ones. The 2 guards assumed that the small carriage was prepared for Han Yunxi, but Han Yunxi knew that Bailey Mingxiang was inside. In the end, they were still at the 3-way Black Market's gates with guards following them. Su Donglin quickly invited Han Yunxi to the small carriage. "Princess, this way please." Long Fei Yi sat in the large carriage, expressionless as he studied a specially made map. He heard Su Donglin's voice, but didn't bat an eyelid. As soon as Han Yunxi boarded the small carriage, Bailey Mingxiang didn't dare to sit. But the carriage was too small for her to stand up, so she was at a loss. Han Yunxi didn't speak, but pressed down on her shoulder to make her sit back down. Bailey Mingxiang didn't know that there were guards following them outside, so she didn't understand why the princess had run over to her place. "Hurry up and go. We need to find a place to rest before it gets dark. This princess doesn't want to sleep in the wilderness," Han Yunxi urged. Although the person in question didn't speak, Gao Bohu and Su Donglin didn't dare to slight Han Yunxi. The 2 of them immediately set off. With a flick of their whips, the horses ran extremely fast. The 2 guards sent by First Elder rode their horses and followed closely behind Han Yunxi's carriage. How would Han Yunxi deal with these 2 obstructing guards? Shake them off? Su Donglin was waiting for his master's orders. Su Donglin guessed that Her Highness would speak first, but who knew that after they were far away from the 3-way Black Market, Han Yunxi would speak. "Su Donglin, stop the carriage." Su Donglin immediately pulled the reins and slowly stopped the carriage. He called for Gao Bohu to stop the carriage as well. The 2 guards were puzzled. They dismounted and were about to go forward when they suddenly heard Han Yunxi shout, "Long Fei Yi, come over here." The 2 guards immediately froze. Su Donglin and Gao Bohu were shocked. What was the princess doing? Bailey Mingxiang was also shocked when she saw the guards from Myriad Merchant Hall. Actually, Long Fei Yi was as surprised as they were. He naturally had to send these 2 guards away, but now was not the time. He had to keep them for a few days so that they could send a few messages back to Myriad Merchant Hall. After reassuring the Elder Council, he would deal with them. They had just left the 3-way Black Market, and the sky was not even dark yet. What was Han Yunxi trying to do? Was she in a hurry? When did she become so clingy? Thinking of this, Long Fei Ye's lips curled into a faint smile. He did not say anything and allowed Han Yunxi to be willful. Even if her willfulness caused a huge disaster, he would be able to clean it up for her. Long Fei, come over here. Are you coming over or not? Han Yunshi shouted again. Long Fei very obediently got off the carriage and walked over. He wasn't dressed in black today, but loose white robes. His ink-black hair was tied up casually, giving him an air of lazy nobility. He was like a high and lofty god who couldn't be offended. Even Uncle Gao and Su Donglin couldn't help but steal a few more glances at him, to say nothing of the women. Bailey Mingxiang didn't dare to look, her head bowed. Just the sight of his boots and robes was enough to make her heart bow and submit to him. Han Yunshi was smiling so widely that her eyes curved into crescents as she watched Long Fei Yi walk closer. Long Fei Ye's attire today reminded her of the time when they were still living in the Duke of Qin's estate in Tianning's capital city. She would often run into him in the courtyard, dressed in snow-white robes as he walked lazily through the winding corridors, either strolling or passing by. She'd stared at him in a daze many times. Under everyone's gaze, Long Fei Yi walked to the front of the carriage. The two guards on the side exchanged glances, unsure whether they should move forward or keep watching, ready to protect him at any time. Her Royal Highness had so rudely called Long Fei Yi off the carriage, so it couldn't be a small matter. But Han Yunshi's next words almost made them fall to the ground. Han Yunshi said, Long Fei Yi, hurry and carry me over. Everyone was stunned. Even Long Fei Yi was caught off guard, but when he saw Han Yunshi reach out her arms, he decisively picked her up from the carriage and carried her in a princess carry. Princess Yi, the two guards were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Han Yunshi lightly waved her hand and shot out two needles. Caught off guard, the guards were hit by the needles before they could dodge. Either your entire body festers and dies, or follow me obediently. I'll give you the antidote tomorrow. Han Yunshi said coldly. When they heard the words festers, the two guards were so scared that their legs almost turned to jelly. They didn't dare to ask any more questions and hurriedly knelt down. Your Royal Highness, please spare our lives. We'll listen to your Royal Highness's orders. Long Fei Ye's smile widened. He hugged Han Yunshi tightly and returned to the large carriage. How could outsiders know what happened in the carriage? Uncle Gao and Su Donglin continued to drive the carriage. The two guards trembled in fear and followed obediently. Bailey Mingxiang let down the small curtain. She bent her knees and hugged them tightly with her arms. She was so lonely that it was as if the whole world had forgotten her. In the carriage, Long Fei Yi had just placed Han Yunshi on the seat. Just as he was about to ask, Han Yunshi suddenly hugged him very tightly. He clearly felt that something was wrong with her and asked gently, What's wrong? Nothing. I just want to hug you. Han Yunshi's eyes were no longer smiling, only heartache. Long Fei Yi lifted her chin and forced her to look up at him. Han Yunshi, who bullied you? Han Yunshi said, Long Fei Yi. Chapter 9:33. Long Fei Yi, let's never be apart, okay? Han Yunshi asked seriously. No matter what the reason was, she didn't want to leave him, and she couldn't leave him again. Who bullied you? Tell me. This was what Long Fei Yi was concerned about. Who else could bully Han Yunshi to this extent? She was about to cry. If she wasn't afraid of Long Fei Yi's questioning, she would have buried her head in his arms and cried bitterly. But why was she crying? He was the one who had gone through all that torture and suffering, not her. It was useless for her to cry until she was blind. She could only hug him tightly and feel the reality of him. Luckily, he had made it through. Luckily, he had become stronger. Seeing that Han Yunshi's eyes were red, Long Fei Yi was angry. His tone suddenly turned cold. What happened? Who bullied you? Tell me clearly. No. She avoided his hand and buried her head in his arms again. I just missed you. I missed you. Han Yunshi wasn't a clingy woman, and she wasn't a woman who would act coquettishly and express her love for no reason. Seeing her like this, Long Fei Yi had to suppress his anxiety and anger. He bent down, cupped her face, and asked patiently, Be good. Tell me what happened. Han Yunxi shook her head and hugged him again. She hugged him tightly, and Long Fei Yi couldn't pull her up no matter how hard he tried. Long Fei Yi couldn't do anything about it. Just as he was about to call Su Donglin over to ask, Han Yunxi let go and covered his mouth. Long Fei Yi, I want to give birth to your children. Give birth to a dozen children, okay? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Long Fei Yi was stunned at first, and then he couldn't help but laugh. Of course it was okay, but he had to figure out what was wrong with this woman first. Why? Why are you suddenly? He smiled bitterly. What happened to you? I felt terrible when I saw Ning Jing and Tang Li. Han Yunxi could only come up with this excuse. Su Donglin had already reported everything that Tang Li had said in Myriad Merchant Hall today. Tang Li's actions also surprised Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi could predict that once Tang Li found Ning Jing, he would definitely fall out with the elders of the Tang sect. What's there to be upset about? Long Fei Yi didn't understand women, but he trusted Han Yunxi. He said unhappily, "Don't worry, you won't get lost. I want to give birth to your child, okay?" Han Yunxi asked again. Long Fei Yi had never seen Han Yunxi so serious. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. He nodded without hesitation. "As long as you're willing." However, he added, "Wait until we come back this time." Han Yunxi could understand his misgivings. But Han Yunxi blurted out, "I want it now." Now, Long Fei Yi was slightly stunned. Soon, he looked Han Yunxi up and down with interest. Did she really understand what he meant? Seeing Long Fei Yi's suggestive gaze on her, Han Yunxi immediately blushed. Only then did she realize that she had spoken too quickly. "I'm not." She was about to explain when Long Fei Yi interrupted her. "Are you sure you want it now?" "No, I'm not." Han Yunxi couldn't explain herself. Long Fei Yi deliberately dragged out his tone. "Sure, as long as you're willing." Han Yunxi was embarrassed, angry, and amused at the same time. She hurriedly explained, "I'm talking about children. I want children, not me." Long Fei Yi finally couldn't help but laugh. He didn't forget to rub her bangs affectionately. He asked, "If you don't want, how are you going to have children?" Han Yunxi's face turned even redder. She couldn't refute him. She really lost to him. Her gloomy mood was also amused by him amidst her crying, laughing, and anger. How could this be? She was the one who felt sorry for him and wanted to hug him. In the end, he was the one who comforted her and coaxed her. "Long Fei Yi, how exactly should I love you and protect you?" Fortunately, Long Fei Yi didn't pursue the matter. Otherwise, Han Yunxi really didn't know how to answer him. She might as well just dig a hole and sell herself. At night, they stopped by a small stream at the foot of the mountain. Uncle Gao found a big tree to stop the carriage and started a fire. Su Donglin went to catch some game, and Bailey Mingxiang helped to roast it. Long Fei Yi carried Han Yunxi to the stream and helped her change her bandages. The two imperial guards stood at the side, trembling with fear. They didn't know when the poison would take effect, and they just hoped that the princess would give them the antidote as soon as possible. "How do you plan to deal with those two imperial guards?" Long Fei Yi asked in a low voice. He meant that the two imperial guards knew something they shouldn't know, and silencing them was the best choice. Han Yunxi waved at the imperial guards and asked them to come over. The two imperial guards immediately ran over and knelt down respectfully with their heads bowed. "What did Great Elder tell you?" Han Yunxi asked. Great Elder wanted this subordinate to report everything that happened here. He wanted the two of us to protect the princess, so we can't. The guard stole a glance at Long Fei, but didn't dare to say anything else. "Can't what?" Long Fei actually spoke. The ice-cold voice scared the imperial guards, and the two of them didn't dare make a sound. "Are you going to speak or not?" Long Fei's voice was filled with warning. The imperial guards trembled for a while before saying, We can't let the East Qin crown prince approach the princess at all." Seeing Long Fei's dark face, Han Yunxi secretly laughed in her heart. She wanted to warn the two imperial guards, but who would have thought that Long Fei would say, "You also saw it. It was the Western Qin princess who told this prince to go over." When these words were said, the two imperial guards shook their heads and waved their hands. No, 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 this subordinate didn't see anything. Her Highness and the East Qin Crown Prince went in separate carriages. This subordinate has been guarding the princess the entire time, and the East Qin Crown Prince has never approached the princess at all. You're certain? Long Fei asked again. The two imperial guards quickly nodded. Certain, certain? It's just like this. This subordinate will report everything to Great Elder. These two imperial guards weren't stupid. With Long Fei's warning, Han Yunshi didn't need to explain anything. Very quickly, the imperial guards blew a whistle and summoned a hawk. Under Long Fei's gaze, they reported the truth to the Great Elder. Han Yunshi threw the antidote over. Remember to ask me for the antidote in 2 days, otherwise. Han Yunshi deliberately didn't say the following words, scaring the two imperial guards so much that their faces turned white. After taking care of these two imperial guards, they were much more relaxed on the road. It also dispelled the Great Elder's final doubts. After resting for half an hour, Han Yunshi's group set off again. Long Fei had already made arrangements for the 100 Poisons sect, so they didn't have much time to waste on the road. Before leaving, Long Fei couldn't help saying, I thought you wouldn't take care of those two imperial guards that quickly. Han Yunshi didn't try to figure out the meaning behind his words and directly replied, I was impatient. Long Fei never thought that this girl would be this direct. He raised a brow as he looked at her, feeling that something was wrong. It was a good thing that Han Yunshi came over in time. She brought over the map he had made and diverted his attention. Han Yunshi looked at the map while chatting with Long Fei. She didn't mention a single thing about what she knew about Long Fei's childhood. She could only be assured in his embrace. While chatting, she unknowingly fell asleep. That night, they crossed over the mountains and headed southwest. However, they didn't know that two people had crossed the mountains at the same time and were heading northeast. They brushed past each other. These two people were none other than Gu and Gu Beiwei. If it wasn't Han Yunshi and Long Fei working together, then there was only one person in this world who could kill Bai Yanqing's poison guards, and that was Gu. The moonlight shrouded the mountains and forests. Gu and Gu Beiwei rode separately on their horses and galloped through the mountains and forests. An enchanting woman in red, devastatingly beautiful. Her luxurious and wide robe fluttered in the wind. Her robe fluttered in the wind along with her horse's galloping gallops, covering the entire mountain, the sky, and the moon. She was flamboyant, wanton, and delightful. The other was dressed in snow-white robes. He was like an immortal, gentle as water. He was the white that the ostentatious red beside him couldn't cover up, the white that couldn't be overturned. Even if the entire world was in a hubbub, he would still be as indifferent as the spring breeze, but he could be gentle to all things. The two men galloped through the mountains. Their figures swam like dragons, winding through the small paths in the mountains. When the first ray of sunlight brushed past their faces, they stopped at the foot of the mountain. Dr. Gu here. Gu tossed over a canteen of water. After galloping through the night, he showed no signs of fatigue. Under the illumination of the sun, he instead seemed even more spirited. Gu Beiwei caught the canteen and drank a few mouthfuls. He smiled. You could just call me North Moon. Forget it. I'll call you Low Moon. Your surname isn't Gu. Gu raised an eyebrow and replied with a question. According to the secret letter Gu Beiwei had sent over, he searched through all the suspicious valleys and finally found North Moon, saving him. Along the way, Gu Beiwei also told him the entire truth behind his cooperation with Long Fei. Ever since he learnt the truth, he had not said a single word. He galloped all the way here with Gu Beiwei. It had already been 2 days and 2 nights without resting. Fortunately, he had cured Gu Beiwei's poison a long time ago. Otherwise, with Gu Beiwei's body, he probably would not have been able to indulge himself like this. Names are just a form of address. Whatever, Gu Beiwei did not mind. After curing the poison, his complexion was clearly much better than before. During the past 2 days and 2 nights, he could have called for a stop, but he did not. Instead, he accompanied Gu Beiwei to the end. Galloping and galloping was a form of catharsis. Some people relied on this method to heal the pain in their hearts. He would never forget Gu's resplendent smile when he saw him. Nor would he forget the moment when Gu's eyes dimmed when he learnt the truth behind his cooperation with Long Fei Yi. When he saw him, Gu was filled with passion. He said to him, "Dr. Gu, come with me. Let's save the poisoned girl together. We'll help her revive her kingdom and conquer the world." After learning the entire truth, only now did Gu speak. Gu Beiwei was unable to understand where he stood on the grievances between Eastern and Western Qin, and whether he trusted Long Fei Yi. However, he definitely felt disappointed. Gu thought for a while before waving his hand impatiently. Forget it. The poison girl calls you Dr. Gu, so just call her that." He looked towards the north and yawned. "The three-way black market is up ahead. We'll be there in a day's journey." Gu Beiwei passed the canteen over and said indifferently, "Seventh young master, if the princess is willing to trust the East Qin crown prince." Chapter 9:34. Gu still thought that Han Yunxi had been placed under house arrest by Ning Cheng, while Gu Beiwei still didn't understand Cloud Realm situation or the various powers. Before Gu Beiwei could finish, Gu interrupted him. "That's their business. It has nothing to do with me. Ning Cheng tricked me. This matter isn't over." A complicated look flitted past Gu Beiwei's eyes, but he didn't pursue the matter. Perhaps Gu was only willing to discuss this matter with Han Yunxi. Now, seeing Han Yunxi was the most important thing. With Long Fei Ye's personality, how could he allow Ning Cheng to put Han Yunxi under house arrest for so long? Unless Han Yunxi would rather be put under house arrest by Ning Cheng than forgive him? But even if she did forgive him, how could Han Yunxi face the heavy responsibility of reviving Western Qin? Ignorance is blameless. She still didn't know who she was or what she was shouldering. She could still be herself. Once she knew everything, could she still be as carefree and unrestrained as before? Gu Beiwei didn't know what choice Han Yunxi would make, but he was certain that Han Yunxi's choice would determine his own. "How do you plan to deal with Ning Cheng?" Gu Beiwei asked. "It's best if he dies at Bai Yanqing's hands. Otherwise, if he dies at my hands, he'll feel even worse." Gu said coldly. "Let's go." Gu Beiwei said faintly. No matter what, they had to see the princess first. The two of them quickly sped off in the direction of three-way black market. Gu really was a heartless thing. Even now, he still hadn't thought of Mu Ling. At this time, Mu Ling was also in the forest, forced to head north. In the carriage, Ning Jing was half lying with a pale face, her legs bound. Mu Ling was sitting beside her, her hands tied behind her back. Suddenly, the carriage jolted and the two of them unconsciously leaned forward. "Ning Jing, be careful!" Mu Ling cried out in alarm. Without hesitation, she fell in front of Ning Jing to block her. Not to mention Ning Jing's body. Even a normal pregnant woman wouldn't be able to withstand such a jolting carriage. Mu Ling fell flat on her face, but as soon as the carriage stabilized, she immediately raised her head and struggled for a while before sitting up. "Ning Jing, are you all right? Are you all right?" Ning Jing was scared out of her wits as well. Fortunately, she didn't fall, or else the consequences would have been unthinkable. "It's nothing." She was still panicking. That's good. Mu Ling was 100 times more nervous than her. Unexpectedly, just as she finished speaking, the carriage jolted again. Fortunately, it was a small jolt this time, and not a big one. However, a small jolt was still a jolt. If it continued, Mu Ling didn't dare to imagine the consequences. "I'll tell them," Mu Ling said angrily. "You're not allowed." Ning Jing cut him off harshly. "Your belly." Before Mu Ling could finish speaking, Ning Jing's sharp gaze stopped her. Ning Jing said coldly, "I'm 100% sure that those two are definitely from the D clan and are very familiar with Myriad Merchant Hall. No matter what, I can't let them know that I'm pregnant." But Mu Linger couldn't stop worrying. "No buts." Ning Jing was very decisive. Mu Ling threw caution to the wind. "Then I'll tell them that I'm pregnant and tell them not to be so jolted." Ning Jing couldn't help but roll her eyes. She lectured, "You're a virgin. Aren't you afraid of ruining your reputation?" I'm not afraid. It doesn't matter, Mu Ling said magnanimously. Why? Ning Jing didn't understand. She had drugged Tang Li because she had no choice. She would rather bear the infamy than be married off to those old men from large conglomerates. Because the person I like doesn't like me. So, no matter how good I am, it's useless. No matter how bad I am, it's the same. Mu Ling, it didn't feel sad at all when she said this. It was as if she was talking about someone else's reality. Ning Jing only realized today that Mu Ling was quite interesting. However, she still said rationally, those two aren't simple. They're not that easy to fool. They'll find a doctor to take their pulse, and they'll know what's going on. At least we can fool them now. They're heading north, probably to Northernly. It'll take them at least 3 to 4 days to get there. They won't be able to find a doctor. Mu Ling asked seriously, Ning Jing, I can guarantee you that if the journey continues for another day, you won't be able to keep the baby in your belly. These words dispelled all of Ning Jing's worries. Mu Ling was right. She couldn't even take care of the baby for the next few days. What was the point of thinking about the future? Then, I'll have to trouble you. Ning Jing avoided Mu Ling's gaze. It's my duty. I owe you. Mu Ling smiled before she started shrieking. Oh, Ning Jing quickly covered her ears. This scream was simply too much. The carriage soon came to a stop. A masked man in black lifted the curtains and said angrily, What are you screaming for? Ning Jing tried very hard to identify this voice. Unfortunately, she still couldn't figure it out. The men who kidnapped her and Mu Ling were 2 masked men in black. That night, they broke into a house while they were sleeping and only alerted the servant girl who was on night duty. She thought that she was the only one who was kidnapped. However, when she was taken out of the 3-way black market, she realized that Mu Ling had also been kidnapped. To be able to sneak into Myriad Merchant Hall so stealthily, know where she lived, and know that Mu Ling was in her courtyard, they were definitely insiders of Myriad Merchant Hall. As for who they were, Ning Jing really couldn't guess. If she hadn't experienced it herself, she would find it hard to believe that there was a spy in Myriad Merchant Hall. These 2 men in black had used a voice-changing technique, so she couldn't tell anything. She only knew that one of them was old and the other was young. The one who kidnapped her was the old man. He sat outside the carriage the whole way and was extremely fierce towards her and Mu Ling. The one who kidnapped Mu Ling was the young man. He was in charge of driving the carriage and spoke very little. So far, he hadn't spoken more than 5 sentences. Mu Ling's eyes were immediately filled with tears. I beg you, before she could finish, the old man in black slammed the curtains down and ignored her. Mu Ling was unwilling to give up and begged again. I beg you to change the carriage. If this bumpy ride continues, the child in my womb will... Before she could finish, the man in black who was driving the carriage suddenly stopped. He lifted the curtains and glared at Mu Ling. Mu Ling and Ning Jing were very surprised, but they couldn't care less. Mu Ling cried, Sir, I beg you. The child is innocent. If anything happens to my child, you won't be able to get any benefits by kidnapping me. Sob sob. Needless to say, when Mu Ling was acting, her big, watery eyes were especially moving. The 2 had no choice but to believe her. The old man in black snorted coldly. Goose child? Mu Ling really hadn't considered this question, but being misunderstood like this, she nodded without hesitation. It's Chi brothers. I beg you, as long as you can save this child. No matter what you want to do, Chi brother will definitely agree. Interesting. Huh. The old man in black looked at the young man. The young man's eyes were gloomy and cold. Pregnant before marriage. Shameless. What a slut. Goose still doesn't know that Ling is pregnant with his child. If you can save this child, no matter what you want to do, you'll have another bargaining chip. Ning Jing also spoke up. The black-robed old man seemed to waver, but the young man remained unmoved. Ning Jing quickly added, The 2 of you, this is the wilderness. If Ling miscarries and can't find a doctor, 2 lives will be lost. Don't regret it. Mu Ling started to cry. Chi brother, sob sob. Chi brother, where are you? Originally, It was just an act, but crying like this suddenly touched the wound in her heart, and her emotions couldn't be controlled. The more Mu Linger cried, the more heartbroken she felt. Her cries of "Chi Gij" were enough to break anyone's heart. Not to mention the two men in black. Even Ning Jing almost believed her. The old man in black laughed and said, "Don't even think about changing carriages. Pick the road." Unexpectedly, the young man said coldly, "Serves you right if you die." With that, the curtains were fiercely lowered. However, after a while, the carriage didn't jolt as much, and it slowed down considerably. Mu Ling secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She winked at Ning Jing and made funny faces. Ning Jing's nervous mood finally relaxed, and she was amused by Mu Ling. Ning Jing said in a low voice, "Mu Ling, I think the guy who kidnapped you has a grudge against you." Mu Ling was slightly startled. Ning Jing analyzed the situation to her in a low voice, and Mu Ling immediately called out a name. Deacon Jean. If there was a grudge, and it was a member of Myriad Merchant Hall, then it could only be Deacon Jean. If it was him, then why did he kidnap you? Mu Ling asked in a low voice. This was also something that Ning Jing couldn't figure out. Judging from the interaction between the old man in black and the young man, they didn't seem to be superior and subordinate, but more like collaborators. Ning Jing really couldn't guess who in Myriad Merchant Hall would kidnap her and be familiar with Deacon Jean. He's not going to sell us to Winter Crow Kingdom as slaves, is he? Mu Ling was frightened. Winter Crow Kingdom wasn't famous for its war horses, but for its slave trade. You and I can't get a good price in Winter Crow Kingdom, but we can extort a sum from Myriad Merchant Hall and Han Yunshi, Ning Jing said seriously. As they chatted, the carriage suddenly stopped. This time, it was a young man who came in. Coldly, he looked at Mu Ling and didn't speak for a long time. Even Ning Jing was scared, but Mu Ling was much bolder. She stared back with wide eyes, not to be outdone. "I'm very valuable." "Yes, very valuable," the young man sneered. What do you want?" The young man didn't answer. He suddenly picked up Mu Ling and sat her down. He untied her, only binding her feet. Then, he threw her a kettle and 2 cold steam buns before leaving. Mu Ling was overjoyed. After confirming that the young man wouldn't come in again, she hurriedly used the hot water in the kettle to soften the cold steamed buns. Then, she handed them to Ning Jing. "Eat quickly, quick! I can't eat that much." "You eat too," Ning Jing said in a low voice. "I'll only give you 1, no more." Mu Ling said as she wrapped the other steamed bun in a handkerchief and hid it well. "I have to save this to save my life. God knows what they want." Ning Jing's heart, which had been cold since she was young, suddenly warmed up. It was so warm that she wanted to cry. Meanwhile, in Myriad Merchant Palace, Tang Li and the 5th Elder had already locked onto Deacon Jean as the suspect. He didn't even show up to repay his debt. Who else could it be other than him? Tang Li's expression was malicious. He searched all over the brothels, but couldn't find Deacon Jean. The 5th Elder was about to speak when a servant came in to report. "5th Elder, Clan Master Tang, there's news of Uncle Chung." Note to the reader, yesterday's seniority was wrong. Tang Li should be called Consort Wan, Aunt Wan, not Aunt Wan. Mo seems to have been wrong about seniority. Go face the wall. Chapter 935. Uncle Cheng's back. 5th Elder asked nervously. Although 5th Elder usually had a bad opinion of Uncle Chung, he didn't want a traitor to appear in Myriad Merchant Hall, especially Uncle Chung, who had followed Master Ning for so many years. He didn't come back. It's just that the manager of Prosperous Heaven Bank said he saw Uncle Chung a few nights ago. The manservant replied truthfully. "A few days ago? Which day?" Tang Li asked warily. Reporting to son-in-law, "This one isn't sure. This one has already found the manager of Prosperous Heaven Bank. He's waiting at the door," the manservant replied. "Why haven't you called him in yet?" Tang Li was anxious. They'd only confirmed that Deacon Jean was no longer in three-way black market after 2 days, yet they didn't have a single clue. Cloud Realm was so big. Where could he find his wife and children? As soon as Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager came in, Tang Li shouted angrily, "When did you see Uncle Chung? Speak in detail, or you'll lose your life." Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager was frightened by these words and sent a pleading look to Fifth Elder. Because Han Yunxi had personally instructed him before leaving, Fifth Elder was very polite and cooperative to Tang Li. He also said angrily, "Tell me everything you know in detail. If you hide anything, you'll bear the consequences." Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager didn't dare to be negligent and immediately reported everything Uncle Chung had said and done at Prosperous Heaven Bank that night. Fifth Elder was shocked. "You're saying that on the night Princess and Head Elder returned, Uncle Chung went to Prosperous Heaven Bank?" "Exactly. This one doesn't dare to lie. At the time, there were 3 workers in the bank who all saw it." Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager answered truthfully. After a moment's hesitation, he said, "Fifth Elder, yesterday Uncle Chung received a sum of money. I don't know. Uncle Chung was in charge of many and miscellaneous affairs in the D clan, so he also had a lot of accounts on hand. Most of them came from Prosperous Heaven Bank, so this wasn't strange. However, for Prosperous Heaven Bank's manager to mention it like this, there must be something strange. Why are you being so long-winded? Speak," the Fifth Elder said unhappily. It was only then that Tianlong's shopkeeper did not hide the fact that Tang Li was present. He reported seriously, "Uncle Cheng's debt is relatively large. It's more than 100 million. "What debt?" The Great Elder's voice rang out before he even arrived. Soon, everyone saw him enter from the side door. "It's very strange. The person who sent the banknotes didn't say anything. He only left 2 surnames and said that Uncle Chung would understand." The Tianlong shopkeeper answered truthfully. "What surname?" Great Elder asked uneasily. "Jia and Dai," Tianlong's shopkeeper replied. "Jia Dai." The Great Elder's face was pale, and he almost fell forward. Fortunately, the attendant caught him in time. "Jia and Dai. How were these 2 surnames? They were the same name. She was the original owner of West Jade Garden and South Jew Garden. Only the Council of Elders knew the details of the purchase of the gardens." Tianlong's shopkeeper naturally did not recognize this name. That day, the Great Elder had rushed back to Three-Way Black Market after he and the princess had finished discussing all matters. Uncle Chung had clearly said that he was going south to hire a dealer for the new casino. Who would have thought that he would actually go to Prosperous Heaven Bank that night? This was obviously a lie. And after so many days, Jia and Dai had actually sent money to Uncle Chung. If the Great Elder still did not understand that there was something fishy about this, he should commit suicide as an apology. "Where did Uncle Chung go that night?" the Great Elder asked angrily. Tianlong's shopkeeper, who did not understand the situation, shook his head repeatedly. Uncle Chung seemed to be waiting for someone. He left without waiting. This lowly one has not seen him since. The Fifth Elder's face was livid, while Tang Li sneered inwardly. Han Yunxi had told him about the purchase of the gardens. Uncle Chung was disloyal to Myriad Merchant Hall and was in charge of its defense. This was too suspicious. Tang Li thought that Jia Dai must have received his older brother's orders. Otherwise, he would not have been so generous as to spend 100 million in banknotes to expose Uncle Chung. Tang Li did not bat an eyelid. The Fifth Elder and the Great Elder exchanged glances. They had finally suspected Uncle Chung. That day, the Great Elder ordered the transfer of guards from the military to replace all of Myriad Merchant Hall's guards. At the same time, he ordered the entire D clan to remove Uncle Chung from all of his duties and authority and put Uncle Chung on the wanted list. The Fifth Elder invited Tang Li to search for Jia Dai together, but Tang Li refused. Tang Li remained at Myriad Merchant Hall to investigate the guards in charge of the palace. Uncle Cheng's suspicions made the Great Elder realize the severity of the situation. He handed over the affairs of the auction house to others and personally interrogated the people from the former East Valley Bank to track down Deacon Jin's whereabouts. The 2 guards that the Great Elder had sent to Han Yunxi's side had given him false information, but the Great Elder's report to Han Yunxi was the truth. The Great Elder would promptly send a letter to Han Yunxi whenever there was any progress in the case of Ning Jing and Mu Ling or his robbery. That afternoon, Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi settled down in a border town. Han Yunxi received the news that Uncle Chung had been exposed. 100 million. Han Yunxi's heart ached for Long Fei Yi. If it wasn't for Long Fei Yi's instructions, Jia Dai wouldn't have dared to spend so much. Long Fei Yi didn't take it to heart. He picked up some food for Han Yunxi. After traveling for several days, they could finally eat hot food. They would stay in the town for the night. Starting tomorrow, they would head straight for 100 Poison Sect. There would be no more time to rest on the road. Thus, he had Uncle Gao and Su Donglin hurry yesterday and reach the town in the afternoon. He wanted to give Han Yunxi ample time to rest, and also let Su Donglin and Uncle Gao replenish their rations. When Han Yunxi left Myriad Merchant Hall, she had specifically asked the fifth elder to keep an eye out for Gu's whereabouts. She didn't dare mention it in front of Long Fei Yi. Just what did Gu Qixiao run into at Black Tower? Why was there still no news of him? There was one more thing that Han Yunxi didn't understand. Long Fei Yi, by Yu Qiao kidnapped Ning Cheng. There should be news by now, right? She asked seriously. Bai Yu Qiao had kidnapped Ning Cheng for so long. It should be time to use Ning Cheng to threaten the D clan. However, there was no news at all. Could it be that Bai Yu Qiao was still hell-bent on finding Bai Yanqing after being tortured to such an extent by Bai Yanqing? Long Fei Yi had also been considering this matter. There's no news from Jun Yixie's side either. Could it be that she really wanted to find Bai Yanqing? Could she be hiding in 100 Poison Sect? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Long Fei Yi couldn't figure it out and asked back. Bai Yanqing still hasn't made any moves in Northern Li. What exactly does he want to do? Bai Yanqing hadn't gained any advantage from the D clan and had fallen at Black Tower. He should have returned to Northern Li to help Jun Yixie fight against the Northern Dynasty's emperors. However, Long Fei Yi had been keeping an eye on Northern Li's situation and hadn't received any news about Bai Yanqing. Jun Yixie hadn't made any moves either. No matter what he wants to do, we can't let him escape this time. Han Yunxi's eyes flashed with viciousness. This time, she had to be ruthless. No matter what the reason was, no matter who it was, she couldn't be stopped. After dinner, the sky had just darkened. Long Fei Yi taught Han Yunxi a few moves of the hidden needle technique. Han Yunxi learned very quickly. She had already cultivated her internal energy and could control the power of nirvana at will. Now, what she needed to do was to learn the needle technique that Long Fei Yi had personally created for her. She named that nameless needle technique the Flying Cloud Needle Technique. Han Yunxi had just injected the needle according to Long Fei Yi's instructions when Long Fei Yi laughed. What are you laughing at? Han Yunxi asked, puzzled. Long Fei Yi didn't answer. Instead, he retreated 10 steps and said to her, "Shoot the needle at me. If you hit it, you'll be heavily rewarded." Han Yunxi was amused. "You want me to finish my apprenticeship so soon? If you hit it, you can consider it." Long Fei Yi wasn't joking. Not only did Han Yunxi have an extremely high innate talent for cultivating internal energy, her comprehension was also very high. This kind of genius only needed a few pointers, and it wasn't impossible for her to learn without a teacher. Of course, he wouldn't let her learn without a teacher. He still enjoyed the process of teaching her martial arts. No matter how high Han Yunxi's innate talent was, if it wasn't a sneak attack, it was impossible to hit him. She had just cultivated her internal energy, so he wasn't in a hurry to dual cultivate the lustful power with her. He wanted to let her rest for a while and practice the needle technique well. "Then I'll change the needle, just in case." Han Yunxi joked. Her needles were all poisonous. Long Fei Yi smiled, but didn't say anything. He walked a few steps closer, closing the distance to help her reduce the difficulty. "Be careful. I'm going to shoot the needle." Han Yunxi laughed mischievously. Long Fei Yi didn't panic as he waited. Han Yunxi took a stance, but didn't make a move for a long time. She just smiled foolishly at Long Fei Yi. "Still not making a move?" Long Fei Yi asked. Han Yunxi pretended to shoot, but all she did was shoot an empty needle. Long Fei saw through her at a glance. "Playing dirty? I don't dare." Han Yunxi laughed. However, While she was laughing, 10 golden needles shot out, and all of them hit Long Fei Ye's vital points without exception. Long Fei Ye didn't move. Seeing that the golden needles were about to enter his body, he didn't move at all. Long Fei Ye. Han Yunxi was anxious. She was just playing with him. She was sure that he would dodge, so she was so ruthless. Han Yunxi rushed over. However, in an instant, the golden needles all entered Long Fei Ye's body. Han Yunxi suddenly stopped. Although these golden needles weren't poisonous, they all hit vital points. The consequences were worse than being poisoned. What was this guy trying to do? She stopped and looked at him in disbelief. Unexpectedly, his eyes turned cold. The 10 golden needles suddenly bounced off his body and flew towards Han Yunxi's body, according to their original path. So, he was playing dirty. Han Yunxi anxiously wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The 10 golden needles all entered her body. Fortunately, there was a difference between her and Long Fei Ye's body. The golden needles flew back according to their original path and didn't hit her vital points, but it hurt. Long Fei Ye, you're more treacherous than me. Han Yunxi angrily rebuked. The enemy is more treacherous than me. Remember, all's fair in war, especially when using hidden weapons. Many of the hits are just illusions. Long Fei Ye walked over as he asked indifferently, "Does it hurt?" Han Yunxi immediately nodded. Besides her own medical needles, most of her needles had been specially made by Long Fei at the Tang clan's behest. The tips of the needles would hook into the flesh, making it very, very painful to be pierced. The instant the needle was pierced, it hurt even more when it was pulled out. "You'll remember it when it hurts," Long Fei Yi said. I'll remember it." Han Yunxi didn't argue. "Let's do it again." A strict teacher produces a fine student. But Long Fei simply scooped her up and carried her into the rooms. "What are you doing?" Han Yunxi asked, puzzled. "I'm going to get rid of the needles," Long Fei Yi said indifferently. "Just pull them out," Han Yunxi said. "It'll hurt. Take care of it slowly in the house. I need to apply some medicine." Although Long Fei Ye's face was cold as ice, his words were simply too warm. What happened to being a strict teacher? Han Yunxi was very worried that she wouldn't be able to become a fine student. She had to seriously consider whether she should let Long Fei Yi personally teach the children martial arts in the future. That night, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi stayed at the inn, while Gu and Gu Beiwei arrived at the three-way black market. Chapter 9:36. As soon as they arrived at three-way black market, Gu took Gu Beiwei directly to Golden Wing Palace. Gu Beiwei was very surprised. "Since when did Golden Wing Palace fall into your hands?" Gu Qixiao was too lazy to explain, but carelessly went to sit on the golden-laid throne in Golden Wing Hall's main hall. He crossed his legs and lazily ordered, "Someone come, call the head manager over." Gu Beiwei glanced at him and chose a seat beside him. He smiled helplessly and didn't pursue the matter. When the head manager of Golden Wing Palace arrived, he immediately knelt. "This subordinate greets master. Welcome back to the palace, master. This is the head of Medical City, Dr. Gu Beiwei. He's my brother." Gu introduced him. The head manager didn't dare to be negligent and immediately bowed deeply, much less the title of head of Medical City. Gu Beiwei didn't put on any airs. He was modest and polite, like a flawless piece of white jade, gentle and warm. The head manager had seen many important people, but he was immediately impressed by Gu Beiwei. "What's the situation at Myriad Merchant Hall?" Gu asked. The first thing he did after returning was to check on the results. He was the one who had stirred up the storm in Myriad Merchant Hall's gambling house and auction house. More accurately, he had stirred up all the gambling houses in three-way black market. Although Gu Beiwei was a bit confused, he sat quietly to the side and listened. "Master, Myriad Merchant Hall's gambling houses are all closed." Gu was quite satisfied with the head manager's words. He lazily tilted his head and looked at Gu Beiwei. "Money is the D clan's lifeline. If we want to take care of them, we have to cut off their source of income." Gu Beiwei nodded thoughtfully, agreeing with this point of view. What about the auction house? Is it closed as well? Gu asked carelessly. He had full confidence in this storm. The head shopkeeper silently wiped away his cold sweat and truthfully reported, Master, Myriad Merchant Hall's auction house hasn't opened for several days. It's about to close, but what? Gu became alert. Could it be that there were more variables? Reputation was the most important thing in an auction. Unless Myriad Merchant Hall found the traitor and could prove that they had been framed, this black mark could not be washed away. If Myriad Merchant Hall found the traitor, wouldn't Golden Wing Hall be exposed? But I don't know where Myriad Merchant Hall got the ability to cooperate with Kangon Private Bank and play some kind of debt game. In short, they've borrowed Kangon Private Bank's reputation, and their business is even more prosperous than before. They've stolen a lot of our business. The head shopkeeper answered honestly. Before Gu could understand what was going on, the quiet Gu Beiwei suddenly exclaimed, Kangon Bank. Exactly. No matter how big the problem is, as long as Kangon Private Bank is willing to step in, it won't be a problem. The head shopkeeper could not help but sigh. Ruining this old man's business? Of course, Gu knew of Kangon Private Bank's wealth, but he didn't think much of it. As long as he was unhappy, he'd accompany them to the end, no matter the price. He narrowed his eyes, his expression dangerous. But Gu Beiwei's whispered words made his face pale. Gu Beiwei murmured, Seventh young master, Kangon Private Bank's master is Long Fei Yi. Gu gave a start before he exclaimed, What did you say? There's something fishy about this. There must be some inside story. Gu Beiwei grew serious. Long Fei Yi had always known that Myriad Merchant Hall was part of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. It was already good enough that he didn't make a move against them. So why would he use Kangon Private Bank's reputation to help them? While Gu's heart was still in turmoil, Gu Beiwei had long calmed down and looked at the head shopkeeper. You're certain that Kangon Private Bank is cooperating with Myriad Merchant Hall? Have you found out who's pulling the strings? Myriad Merchant Hall and Kangon Private Bank had never cooperated before, so there had to be someone pulling the strings. That's not clear. This subordinate will investigate immediately. The head shopkeeper was about to leave when Gu Beiwei called him back. Hold on. Is Myriad Merchant Hall managed by the Council of Elders? Or is Ning Chung personally in charge? A few days ago, there was an explosion at Black Tower. Everyone says that Ning Chung brought along the red-robed men. There are many rumors, but this subordinate hasn't been able to find out the truth. Myriad Merchant Hall has always been managed by the Council of Elders. You can even see a few of them at the auction house these days, the head shopkeeper replied honestly. The head shopkeeper had no idea what was going on at Black Tower, but Gu and Gu Beiwei had a rough idea. When they passed by Black Tower, they saw that it had already been reduced to ruins. Gu Beiwei turned to Gu and said, Let's find out more about Black Tower first before we discuss the rest. Gu recovered his wits and silently sighed with emotion. Gu Beiwei really hid himself too deeply. He was a doctor, but he knew the business world and three-way black market like the back of his hand. Gu wasn't so patient. His face was gloomy as he said, Find out what? I'll go find Ning Chung right now. Gu Beiwei stopped him and said, I keep feeling that there's more to Kangon Private Bank's cooperation with Myriad Merchant Hall than meets the eye. After some hesitation, he said to Gu, I'll take you somewhere. Do you dare? Where? Gu didn't understand. Gu Beiwei smiled faintly. You'll know when we get there. Then let's go. Besides a certain cave in Cloud Realm Continent, there was nowhere Gu didn't dare to go. Gu Beiwei brought Gu to none other than East Origin Hall. When Gu followed Gu Beiwei out of the secret passageway and into the back courtyard of East Origin Hall, Gu couldn't help but exclaim, Well done, Gu Beiwei. So you're the mastermind behind East Origin Hall. Gu Beiwei smiled and replied modestly, Seventh young master misunderstands. This one is only a poor doctor. This is... Gu Beiwei couldn't help but laugh. Gu looked doubtful. What do you mean? Seventh young master, this is the East Sheen Crown Prince's territory, Gu Beiwei said. In a flash, Gu's entire body seemed to stiffen. Only his eyes could move, and he rolled them around like a marionette. Wasn't enough to be attacked twice in a day. Both attacks came from the same person, Long Fei Yi. Gu gritted his teeth. A complicated look flickered past Gu Beiyue's eyes. He didn't know whether to joke or not, but said seriously, "Seventh young master, I can't guarantee anything else. But I, Gu Beiyue, can guarantee with my life that Long Fei Yi isn't using the princess." Was Gu Beiyue trying to coax peace? Perhaps Gu Qixiao and Long Fei were born to be incompatible, because he only laughed coldly and didn't reply. There must be an inside story behind Kangon Private Bank and Myriad Merchant Hall's cooperation. If you ask here, it'll definitely be truer than what you found at Myriad Merchant Hall. Gu Beiyue explained. Long Fei Yi wouldn't lie to me. Moreover, I have to let Long Fei Yi know as soon as possible that Bai Yanqing has no more bargaining chips in his hands. Gu's face was still gloomy, but he still followed Gu Beiyue towards the East Origin Hall's Council of Elders. On the way, he didn't spare a glance at East Origin Hall and discovered that it was even more luxurious than Myriad Merchant Hall. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to. Long Fei Yi was Cloud Realm Continent's richest man. Soon enough, they ran into a guard. Gu Beiyue immediately told him to send word that he wanted to see the head elder, who knew that not long after the attendant left, a familiar figure would run towards them. Tangli, Gu narrowed his eyes. "You brat, you won quite a bit of money at 1,000 Gold Pavilion." Tangli looked Gu Beiyue up and down, at a loss for words. In the end, he blurted out, "Dr. Gu, my big bro misses you every day." Gu Beiyue gave a start, but Gu only laughed out loud. "Hee hee, Gu Beiyue, Long Fei Yi treats you with deep affection." Tangli realized he'd said the wrong thing in his excitement. He was about to explain when Gu Beiyue smiled. "Tang Clan head, I wonder where the East Qin Crown Prince is right now. Did he receive the secret letter I sent him? And also, why is Kangon Private Bank cooperating with Myriad Merchant Hall?" Gu Beiyue's questions were all critical. Tangli immediately told him everything that had happened recently. Gu Beiyue listened attentively from beginning to end, while Gu Qixiao's face was a myriad of colors that kept changing. When he heard about the hostages, pain flashed through his eyes. When he heard that Ning Cheng had been kidnapped, he fell into deep thought. And when he heard that Han Yunxi had used less than 10 days to resolve the crisis in Myriad Merchant Hall's gambling house and auction house, and take control of Myriad Merchant Hall's Council of Elders, he smiled bitterly. There was nothing he could do. Everything was explained clearly. Han Yunxi had already made her choice and was fighting side by side with Long Fei Yi. What else did he have to fight for? Actually, he hadn't lost to Long Fei Yi, but to Han Yunxi. As long as he was willing, with his immortal body, he could single-handedly fight against all forces and obtain everything. As long as she was willing, he could give her anything. Unfortunately, she wasn't willing. Han Yunxi could overlook such a deep national enmity. Even if they were to meet on the battlefield, Han Yunxi would still choose Long Fei Yi. Just how much did his poison last like Long Fei? His original hot-bloodedness seemed to have been extinguished by cold water. Gu shrugged and smiled. He didn't seem to be dispirited. He was still frivolous and did things his own way. Under Tang Li and Gu Beiyue's gaze, he smiled and said nonchalantly, "As long as Poison Girl likes it." He turned to leave after he finished speaking, but Gu Beiyue quickly stopped him. "Where are you going?" "To help Poison Girl find medicine. Fractures hurt a lot," Gu said calmly. Just a moment ago, he had been so full of himself, wanting to conquer the world for her. Now, he couldn't care less about anything other than the small matter of her wound hurting. Gu Beiyue suddenly realized that his previous worries were somewhat laughable. Looking at Gu's back, he suddenly felt that his heart was no longer as lonely as before. "Xiao Qi, do you know that I love her too?" The seventh young master had already walked far away when Tang Li suddenly remembered something and shouted anxiously, "Gu, Mu Linger has been kidnapped. She and Ning Jing have been kidnapped in Myriad Merchant Hall." He had been too excited just now and had been talking about his brother and sister-in-law. He had actually forgotten about this. Gu stopped abruptly. He finally remembered that he had left Mu Linger behind in Myriad Merchant Hall. He turned around and asked, Who did it? Tang Li named the suspect. He had come to East Origin Hall today to dispatch men to help track down Deacon Jean and Uncle Cheng's whereabouts. Gu Beiwei made a prompt decision. Seventh young master, stay behind and help Tang Li. I'll go to 100 Poison Sect. The princess leg has been recovering for so long. She'll be fine after a few rounds of acupuncture. Leave it to me. Chapter 9:37. With Gu's temperament, Tang Li thought that he would reject Gu Beiwei's suggestion, and Gu Beiwei was prepared to persuade him otherwise. If Gu was the palace lord of Golden Wing Hall, then he would be able to help Tang Li in the three-way black market. At the very least, he would be able to find some clues about Deacon Jean. Deacon Jin's East Valley Private Bank didn't only do business in Myriad Merchant Hall's casinos, but also in Golden Wing Hall and East Origin Hall's casinos. If Golden Wing Hall could provide assistance, Gu Beiwei didn't believe that the three major powers of the three-way black market wouldn't be able to find a single person even if they worked together. Gu hesitated for a moment, but didn't refuse. He said to Gu Beiwei, if you need any medicinal ingredients, feel free to contact the Medicine Ghost Valley. Also, I will send someone to help you find the dragon pill. Ever since Gu Beiwei was severely injured by the two elders of the Chu clan, his dantian had been damaged, and his inner strength had dissipated. No matter how much he cultivated, he couldn't gather qi. Elder Kinzo had told Long Fei Yi that there was a medicine in this world called the dragon pill that could heal Gu Beiwei's injuries. However, Long Fei Yi still hadn't found this medicine. A few months ago, Long Fei Yi had sent Gu Beiwei a phoenix habitat pill, which had allowed Gu Beiwei to recover 20 to 30% of his strength. The dragon pill only existed in legends. Long Fei Yi had used all his resources, but still couldn't find any clues. Even though finding medicine was Gu's forte, if this medicine didn't exist in this world, how could he find it? Gu Beiwei didn't have much hope, but he still bowed in thanks. Gu glanced at him unhappily. Why are you being so polite? Just like that, Tang Li sent a letter to Long Fei Yi informing him that Gu Beiwei had been rescued. At the same time, he sent a few elites to secretly escort Gu Beiwei to 100 Poison Sect. Gu stayed behind. After sending off Gu Beiwei, he went to Willowflower Lane alone. He was much better than Tang Li at the brothel. If Mu Linger knew that her Qi brother did not rush to find medicine for Han Yunqi, but stayed to look for her, she would be so moved that she would burst into tears. However, at this moment, she was working hard for herself. The carriage stopped at the foot of the mountain. Ning Jing and Mu Ling were tied up in the carriage. Both of their legs were tied up. The two robbers were resting on a tree not far away. The old man in black leaned against the tree trunk with his arms crossed, and his eyes narrowed. The young man was lying on the overgrown tree trunk, his hands behind his head. His eyes were wide open. The moonlight that sifted through the canopy shone into his eyes, reflecting his many years of loneliness and wandering. A homeless person would always have a ray of moonlight hidden in his heart. That was the bright moonlight that illuminated the mountains and rivers of his hometown. Old Chung, shouldn't we ask for money from Myriad Merchant Hall? He asked calmly. Yes, he was Deacon Jean. The Deacon Jean who had been tricked by Ning Jing into losing everything, and then tricked by Mu Ling into a huge debt. That night, he had met Uncle Chung in Willowflower Lane. Uncle Chung could not take out the money and wanted to kill him to silence him. Uncle Chung had truly underestimated him. In a few moves, he had killed all the experts Uncle Chung had brought and captured Uncle Chung. He had originally wanted to take Uncle Chung to Myriad Merchant Hall to negotiate with Han Yunqi. However, Uncle Chung had stopped him. Han Yunqi was a woman who would not take even the slightest loss. If Han Yunqi knew that he had colluded with Uncle Chung, he would not be able to get anything out of it. When the time came, he would not be able to pay back his debt. Perhaps he would even be sold off. Uncle Chung had helped him come up with an idea. He wanted him to kidnap Mu Ling. He had long wanted to settle the score with Mu Ling. Unfortunately, Myriad Merchant Hall was heavily guarded, and he could not enter. However, with Uncle Cheng's help, It was easy for him and Uncle Chung to sneak into Myriad Merchant Hall. His target was Mu Ling, but he had not expected that Uncle Chung would kidnap Ning Jing as well. According to Uncle Chung, kidnapping Ning Jing was to mislead the public. Now, they were already far away from the three-way black market and were about to reach Northern Lee. It was time to send out the blackmail. Uncle Chung laughed coldly. Jean Z, you don't understand Han Yunqi at all, do you? Deacon Jean immediately sat up. What do you mean? As far as I know, Han Yunqi was threatened by Yanqing once. He even threatened her with Gu Buyue's life. Uncle Chung said calmly. What does that have to do with me? Tell her that if she still wants to see Mu Ling, she should immediately help me pay off my debt to Kingan Bank, then use the indenture contract to redeem her. Deacon Jean said coldly. Jean Z, you still don't know about the relationship between Han Yunqi and manager Luo of Kingan Bank, right? Kingan Bank has already cooperated with Myriad Merchant Hall's casino. If Han Yunqi wants to fake a debt repayment, it's just a matter of saying a word. Moreover, you want her to use the indenture contract to redeem her. Aren't you afraid of her poison skills? Uncle Chung analyzed seriously. Mu Linger is in my hands. I have a way to escape. Deacon Jean said unhappily. Uncle Chung walked over and said in a low voice, Deacon Jean, don't forget that Han Yunqi doesn't have the final say in the D clan. Ning Chung is the true master. Deacon Jean suddenly said angrily, do you think I don't know that Ning Cheng's whereabouts are unknown? If Ning Chung was here, he wouldn't have fallen into Han Yunqi's hands. It was Ning Chung who had asked him to put Mu Ling under house arrest. Uncle Chung carefully took out a letter from his sleeve. Deacon Jean glanced at the handwriting on the letter and was shocked. If that wasn't Ning Cheng's handwriting, then what could it be? You have Ning Cheng's whereabouts? What's going on? Deacon Jean asked anxiously. Although he and Ning Chung were both friends and enemies, their friendship was more important than their hostility. He believed that Ning Chung wouldn't sit idly by and do nothing about his fate today. Just come with me. I guarantee that you'll definitely be able to see Master Ning. As for whether Master Ning will help you or not, that will depend on your friendship. Uncle Chung said with a smile. Deacon Jean realized that he had been tricked by Uncle Chung. It turned out that Uncle Chung had asked him to kidnap Mu Ling, and Ning Jing not to extort Han Yunqi, but to have other motives. What was the relationship between the D clan and Han Yunqi, the Western Qin princess? Ning Chung was so loyal, but why did he treat Han Yunqi's younger sister Mu Ling like this? He couldn't care less about Western Qin's domestic affairs, nor was he interested. He only wanted to repay his debt and regain his freedom. Okay, I'll go with you. Deacon Jean readily agreed. Uncle Chung finally breathed a sigh of relief. When he came up with the idea of kidnapping, he was forced into a corner. Originally, he only wanted to make things difficult for Han Yunqi, who knew that he would fall deeper and deeper, placing himself in the position of a traitor. If he had temporarily deceived Deacon Jean and let Han Yunqi have something on him, his fate would have been unimaginable. He hadn't thought about what to do next. However, he hadn't gone far from the three-way black market when his confidant delivered Ning Cheng's secret letter. This letter saved him and also pointed out a path for him. Ning Cheng's eyes were injured by Han Yunqi, but the letter said that he was fine in Northern Lee. He couldn't help but suspect that Ning Chung and Jun Yixie were working together. No matter what the truth was, this trip to Northern Lee was a good opportunity to persuade Ning Chung. He had already told Ning Chung that Han Yunqi didn't deserve to be Western Qin's princess, and even more so, she didn't deserve the D clan's loyalty. With Ning Cheng's ability and military strength, if he cooperated with Jun Yixie, it would be enough to contend with Long Fei Yi. At least, they could get half the world. Why should he be foolishly loyal to Western Qin and be beaten black and blue by Han Yunqi? Thinking of this, Uncle Chung secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he knew Ning Cheng's whereabouts. Otherwise, he would be the only traitor in the history of the D clan. Just as the two of them were talking, Mu Linger suddenly shouted from the carriage, "Someone come! Someone come!" As soon as she shouted, Deacon Jean immediately looked over. Uncle Chung heard it, but didn't pay much attention. What's wrong with her now? Deacon Jean asked impatiently. Don't worry about her. She'll stop shouting when she's tired. Uncle Chung planned to ignore her. Deacon Jean didn't say anything and got up to go over. Uncle Chung immediately stopped him. I'll go. See how I deal with her. She's a woman after all, and a pregnant one at that. You should restrain yourself. Deacon Jean said indifferently. Hee, Jean Z, when did you become so soft-hearted? You're in this state today because of that stinky girl. Uncle Chung laughed. That stinky girl is worth more than Ning Jing. I'm only giving face for the sake of money. Deacon Jean lay back down. Uncle Chung shrugged and strode towards the carriage. Who knew that as soon as he arrived, Mu Linger would shout that she wanted to use the outhouse. Take care of it yourself in the carriage. Don't play tricks with me. Uncle Chung said coldly. I'm not going to the outhouse. It's Aya. Hurry up and take me down. I can't hold it in anymore. You're a man. Don't tell me you can't control a woman like me. Mu Linger said and immediately changed her words. No, you can't look. Aya, I'm begging you. I'll take care of it in the bushes at the side. Even if I run away, you can still chase after me, right? Mu Linger clutched her stomach. She was so anxious that her facial features were all squeezed together. All right. Uncle Chung helped Mu Linger untie her feet and let her get off the carriage. Mu Linger looked like she couldn't hold it in any longer. She quickly ran into the bushes. Uncle Chung shouted, Don't run too far. Very quickly, Mu Linger squatted down in the bushes, only revealing her head. Uncle Chung glanced at her and waited by the carriage. Inside the carriage, Ning Jing was filled with anxiety. She only hoped that everything would go smoothly on Mu Linger's side. She and Mu Linger tore their handkerchiefs and inner linings of their dresses into strips. They bit their fingers and used their blood to write a cry for help. Mu Linger had already peeked in the carriage earlier. There were many herbs on both sides of the road, and there were signs that they had been picked. As long as they hid the strips of cloth beside the herbs, they would definitely be seen by the people picking the herbs. Mu Linger seemed to have picked a random spot, but she had actually picked a spot with the most herbs. Uncle Chung waited for a moment and urged, Are you done? Mu Linger didn't dare to delay. She hurriedly tied the strips of cloth to the roots of the herbs and hurried back. Thank you, she said politely. She didn't show any signs of panic when faced with Uncle Cheng's scrutiny. Uncle Chung sized her up and didn't find anything strange. He said coldly, Get in the carriage. Mu Linger heaved a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, when she got in the carriage, Uncle Cheng's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of a torn corner of her dress. Wait! Uncle Chung said angrily. Mu Linger's heart raced, but she still tried very hard to calm herself down. She got out of the carriage and asked, What's the matter? Uncle Chung suddenly grabbed her and strode into the bushes. Mu Linger knew that she couldn't escape, so she lowered her eyes and let Uncle Chung pull her. Soon, Uncle Chung saw the strips of cloth tied to the herbs. He untied one strip and took a look. He was instantly furious. Good, you brat. You're so smart. Uncle Chung threw away the strip of cloth and suddenly grabbed Mu Linger's hair. Chapter 9:38. Uncle Chung grabbed Mu Linger by her hair and pushed her to the ground. Mu Linger did not expect that the black-robed elder would attack a woman. She was frightened and turned to flee. Damn girl, you don't know what's good for you. Uncle Chung chased after her and grabbed Mu Linger's arm. Mu Linger screamed in fright, closing her eyes and struggling for her life. However, she soon heard a cold voice. Let go. Almost at the same time, she felt a large, warm hand pressed down on her shoulder. She looked up and saw that the person was none other than a masked young man. This damn girl left a secret signal for help. Uncle Chung said angrily. He was so angry because Mu Linger had written the words Traitor of Myriad Merchant Hall on the note. Uncle Chung hated this title and thought that he had never wanted to be a traitor. He had been forced to take this step. He was going to find Ning Chung now. He had not betrayed the D clan. Deacon Jean looked down at Mu Linger and asked coldly, "How many secret signals did you leave? Tell me the truth." Right here, right here." Mu Linger blinked her large, teary eyes and looked pitiful. She did not know why, but she had a feeling that this young man would not make things too difficult for her. "Let go of her. Go pack up and leave immediately," Deacon Jean said calmly to Uncle Chung. Uncle Chung snorted disdainfully. "You can't believe this damned girl's words. If you don't interrogate her properly, she won't tell the truth. Who knows how many secret signals she left along the way." I just left them here. I won't dare to do it again. I beg you, let me go. I really won't dare to do it again," Mu Linger hurriedly begged. She tried her best to break free from Black Costume Old Man's grip, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't. That old thing was grabbing her wrist so hard that it hurt. Uncle Ching looked coldly at Deacon Jean and said fiercely, "Don't interfere. I have my ways to make her tell the truth." However, Deacon Jin's attitude was firm. "She's mine. I'll be the one to interrogate her." Uncle Chung was exasperated. However, seeing the determination in Deacon Jin's eyes, he finally gave in. He was still on the run. He and Deacon Jean were in the same boat. He didn't want to fall out with him at this time. Compared to Ning Jing, Mu Linger was indeed more valuable. If Ning Chung saw Mu Linger as a bargaining chip, he would definitely be very satisfied. Uncle Chung fiercely shook off his hand and went to deal with the bloody words left behind by Mu Linger. Seeing the masked old man walk away, Mu Linger immediately avoided the big hand on her shoulder. "That hero, I really only left the secret signal here. I won't dare to do it again. Please let me go." Deacon Jean glanced at her wrist that was bruised from a grip. He looked down and quickly found that there were bloodstains on her skirt. He was shocked. Your child." Mu Linger looked down and saw the bloodstains. Only then did she realize that she was pretending to be pregnant. That push just now should have affected the fetus. She immediately pretended to be panicked. She and Deacon Jean looked at each other for a while, then looked down and slowly lifted her skirt. Deacon Jean had never encountered such a situation before. He didn't understand at all. Seeing Mu Linger lift her skirt, he looked on nervously, not realizing that he was being indecent. However, when Mu Linger lifted her skirt to her knees, he instantly breathed a sigh of relief. He saw that Mu Linger's knees were bruised and bleeding a lot. Mu Linger glanced at Deacon Jean and pretended to rejoice. She let out a long breath. Fortunately, she had never been pregnant before and didn't know what it felt like to be pregnant. Based on her understanding, she touched her flat belly and said in a choked voice, "Child, Mother has let you down. Ooh, you must be fine. You're stronger than Mother." After a false alarm, Deacon Jean became irritated again. He said coldly, "If there's nothing else, then go back to the carriage. Hand over all the cloth strips you've hidden." Deacon Jean wasn't stupid. He wanted to know if Mu Linger and the others had left cloth strips in other places. He only needed to find the ones in the grass and the ones in their hands. If they weren't complete, for example, they were left in other places. Besides using handkerchiefs to tear cloth strips, these two women could only tear the corners of their skirts. It was very easy to piece them together. Mu Linger gritted her teeth and nodded pitifully. Before she left, Deacon Jean turned around and left first. She actually wanted to thank him. Her woman's intuition told her that this young man still took good care of her. Deacon Jean walked far away. He looked back and saw Mu Linger slowly limping away. He hesitated for a moment, then turned back. "Hero, you..." Before Mu Linger could finish her words, Deacon Jean picked her up and walked towards the carriage. "Thank you," Mu Linger said in a low voice. She didn't know if Deacon Jean heard her, but he didn't say a word. Seeing that they were about to reach the carriage, Deacon Jean suddenly turned and walked toward the big tree with Mu Linger in his arms. Could it be that this guy regretted it and wanted to interrogate her? Mu Linger felt uneasy. Deacon Jean put her down under the tree and let her sit against the trunk. Then he asked coldly, "Do you have medicine?" Mu Linger didn't react for a moment and asked, "What medicine?" Deacon Jin's eyes flashed with displeasure. He didn't answer her and suddenly leaned closer. Mu Ling pushed him away reflexively. "What are you doing?" Deacon Jean fell to the ground, and his sullen eyes became even angrier. He still didn't speak. He got up and approached Mu Ling again. "What are you doing? Go away. Don't touch me. Get lost." Mu Ling shouted, but Deacon Jean grabbed her hand so that she couldn't struggle. Mu Ling stretched out her leg and was about to kick him when Deacon Jean took out a few bottles of medicine from the small cloth bag that she always carried around with her. At this moment, Mu Ling quieted down. She realized that she had misunderstood. Deacon Jean picked out a bottle of medicine and said coldly, "Leg." Mu Ling finally understood that he wanted to help her apply the medicine. She carefully took out another bottle. "This one is more effective." Deacon Jean was about to take it, but Mu Ling avoided him and said timidly, "I can apply it myself. Just now. I'm sorry." Deacon Jean snorted softly, but still didn't speak. Mu Ling hesitated for a moment and said softly, Erm, can you leave for a while?" She had lifted her skirt just now to prove that she didn't have a miscarriage, lest this man really called the doctor. Now that she wanted to apply the medicine, he naturally had to leave. How could she let others see her leg so casually? Since Mu Ling had spoken so bluntly, Deacon Jean naturally understood what she meant. He immediately turned his back and sat in front of her. Mu Ling was relieved and carefully lifted her skirt. Both her knees were bloody from the fall. It really hurt. Luckily, it was hidden under her skirt. Otherwise, it would have been ugly. The surroundings were quiet. Deacon Jean and Mu Ling sat in front of each other. Mu Ling was sure that she was a valuable hostage and that this young kidnapper wouldn't hurt her. She forgot about her earlier fear and focused on her wound. Deacon Jean lowered his head. His fine fringe covered his eyes, and in the darkness, his eyes were dark. He was silent for a while. Suddenly, he turned around and looked at Mu Ling's well-proportioned and fair calves. He said sarcastically, "Mu Ling, you're so casual. Do you mind being seen by others?" Mu Ling was stunned. She immediately covered her skirt and said angrily, "What do you mean?" Deacon Jean snorted coldly. "You can even do something like getting pregnant before marriage, and you're still afraid of others seeing your legs? What are you pretending for?" Mu Ling was immediately angry, but she suppressed it. "I'm casual with Chi brother. No one else can do it." Deacon Jin's gaze turned cold. He scolded, "You're so cheap." Mu Ling had never scolded him like that before. She said provocatively, "I like it. What does it have to do with you? Do I need you to meddle in other people's business?" Deacon Jean seemed to want to say something, but he didn't. Just as he was about to turn and leave, Mu Ling's words stopped him in his tracks. Mu Ling said, "Hey, you're Deacon Jean, aren't you?" "No," Deacon Jean replied calmly. "You are. You must be. I can't be wrong." Mu Ling insisted. Deacon Jean didn't intend to pay attention to her, but Mu Ling said, "That old man is from Myriad Merchant Hall, right? Who is he? Do you know that you've been tricked by him?" Although Deacon Jean didn't answer, he didn't walk forward either. There was no doubt that this was the emotional drama he had told Mu Ling about. Seeing this, Mu Ling hurriedly said, "Deacon Jean, you kidnapped me just to threaten my sister to help you pay off her debt, right? You didn't intend to kidnap Ning Jing, did you?" Mu Ling continued, "Think about it. Why would that old man kidnap Ning Jing for no reason? He has selfish motives. He's trying to clear himself of suspicion and throw all the blame on you. But everyone in Myriad Merchant Hall knows that kidnapping Ning Jing won't threaten the D clan or anything. That's why he brought Ning Jing out on purpose. He's creating an illusion to clear himself of suspicion. He's taking you all the way north now. You don't even know that you've been used by him." Of course, all of this had been analyzed by Ning Jing. Otherwise, given Mu Ling's understanding of Myriad Merchant Hall, she wouldn't have thought that it was so deep. Uncle Chung did indeed have such intentions when he kidnapped Ning Jing. He didn't want to leave any stain on Myriad Merchant Hall's reputation. But he never expected that Jia Dai would give him 100 million taels and betray him so thoroughly. As for Ning Jing, How would she know so much? Until now, she was only certain that there was a traitor in the D clan, but she couldn't guess who it was. Deacon Jean turned to look at her. Ning Jing told you, didn't she? Deacon Jean could more or less see through Uncle Cheng's scheme. However, Ning Cheng's handwritten letter confirmed his decision to meet Ning Cheng instead of blackmailing Han Yunqi. You admitted it, Mu Linger exclaimed. Deacon Jean avoided her gaze. Ning Jing is wrong. I'm not Jean Zi. You are, Mu Linger said anxiously. Deacon Jean, I'll sell all the things I won from the auction and exchange them for money for you. If it's not enough, I'll think of a way to pay for it. Let's go, all right? I swear on my life that I'll definitely convince my sister to return the indenture contract to you. Deacon Jean stood up, clearly uninterested. Deacon Jean, I'll be honest with you. My sister has already taken control of Myriad Merchant Hall. Ning Cheng's whereabouts are unknown. Now, other than my sister, no one can help pay off his debt, much less return your indenture contract. Don't believe that old man. I'm not lying to you, Mu Linger said seriously. Han Yunqi has taken control of Myriad Merchant Hall? Deacon Jean was shocked. Chapter 9:39. Mu Ling had no idea that Deacon Jean was heading north to find Ning Cheng. Seeing Deacon Jin's shock, she thought she had a chance and quickly added, Deacon Jean, you should know what Myriad Merchant Hall means to the D clan. I won't lie to you about this. If you don't believe me, you can ask Ning Jing yourself. My big sis helped Myriad Merchant Hall deal with the gambling houses and auction houses, so all of the elders are wholeheartedly convinced of her abilities. A complicated look flickered past Deacon Jin's eyes. If Han Yunqi controlled Myriad Merchant Hall, then what about Ning Cheng? If there was a rift between Han Yunqi and Ning Cheng, then the D clan would definitely listen to Ning Cheng. After all, Ning Cheng was the clan head. Deacon Jean didn't tell Uncle Cheng about this. After checking all the strips of cloth and making sure there were no mistakes, they hurried through the night towards northern Li's Sky River City. But the next day, they heard news that Eastern and Western Qin were actually working together. Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi had joined forces to denounce the Bai clan and challenge the 100 Poisons sect. They wanted the Bai clan to clarify whether the civil war between Eastern and Western Qin had been East Qin's fault or Western Qin's. The ones who spread the news were none other than the D clan's Myriad Merchant Hall Council of Elders. Only now did Deacon Jean believe Mu Linger's words. Ning Cheng must know about this too, Deacon Jean probed. Hee. Han Yunqi's caught herself in a trap of her own making. Don't you worry. Ning Cheng won't let her off. Uncle Cheng said coldly. Mu Linger and Ning Jing were trapped in the carriage, so they didn't hear the news. If Ning Jing did, she'd probably be happy. Myriad Merchant Hall had spread the news throughout Cloud Realm continent, so Jun Yixia had long received the news. With a loud bang, Jun Yixia threw a secret letter in front of Ning Cheng. This secret report was about the elders of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and the deputy generals of the Ning clan troops rushing towards the 100 Poisons sect. Ning Cheng casually flipped through it and said coldly, Isn't that perfect? I'll get rid of Bai Yanqing for you. As soon as he finished speaking, Jun Yixia clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. He would never allow anyone to mention the matter between him and his master. Bai Yuqiao was afraid of him, but Ning Cheng was not. He snorted, Jun Yixia, you should be glad that Bai Yanqing did not come to Beili. Otherwise, you would be very pitiful. Enough. Jun Yixia flipped over the letter on the table and raged. Ning Cheng, Han Yunqi controls your D clan's purse. What are you going to use to cooperate with me? This was Jun Yixia's main concern. Ning Cheng was unruffled. This clan head will always have the final say in the D clan. Haven't you already reported your safety? Why didn't the Council of Elders inform you of such an important decision? Jun Yixia pressed closer to Ning Cheng and demanded. Ning Cheng slowly pushed him aside. Jun Yixia, I was kidnapped by Bai Yuqiao. As long as they search the ruins of Black Tower, they'll be able to guess it. What do you think they'll believe with a single letter before confirming my safety? Jun Yixie seemed to realize something, and his expression changed. Ning Cheng coldly said, Jun Yixie, if the 30,000 cavalrymen head south, the entire D clan will believe that I'm safe. Otherwise, they'd rather listen to Han Yunxi than a letter of unknown origin. You won't get a single copper coin. You're threatening me. Jun Yixie raged. Yes, Ning Cheng admitted generously. Don't forget that your life is in my hands. Jun Yixie said sternly. You can kill me. Ning Cheng looked indifferent. With Jun Yixie's personality, if he could kill him, he would have done so long ago. Haha, kill you? I can't afford to kill you. Your life is worth at least 1 billion. Jun Yixie's words implied that he wanted to use Ning Cheng to threaten the D clan. If you think it's worth it, you can try. Ning Cheng was as calm as Mount Tai. The news of Han Yunxi and Long Feiye's cooperation was a huge help to him. The cooperation between Eastern and Western Qin would make Ning Cheng desperate. The reason why he wrote a letter to Uncle Cheng was because Uncle Cheng was usually dissatisfied with Han Yunxi and repeatedly instigated him to betray Western Qin's imperial family. Han Yunxi hurt his eyes, and he only wrote one sentence in the letter, which was enough to arouse Uncle Cheng's suspicion. If he didn't gamble wrong, Uncle Cheng wouldn't tell anyone in the D clan his whereabouts. Instead, he would personally come to find him and persuade him to cooperate with Jun Yixie. With Uncle Cheng helping him put on an act, it would be easier to win Jun Yixie's trust. Jun Yixie was indeed anxious. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Ning Cheng. Ning Cheng sat down on the side and said indifferently, I don't mind telling you that Han Yunxi and Long Fei, ye still have feelings for each other. That woman has long ignored the cause of reviving the empire. The grudges between Eastern and Western Qin can't stop her. Instead, Myriad Merchant Hall's Elder Council will be led by the nose by her. Jun Yixie, you don't have much time. Think it over. Jun Yixie finally understood that Ning Cheng was gambling with the entire D clan. If he gave up the 30,000 war horses, Ning Cheng would immediately appear to take back the D clan's authority. If he didn't, Ning Cheng would rather give the D clan to Han Yunxi than cooperate with him. In the end, Ning Cheng wanted him to give the 30,000 war horses to the D clan first, and then give him military pay and provisions. Originally, they had agreed to hand over the money and the war horses. Jun Yixie was naturally on guard against Ning Cheng holding back, but he didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen in just a few days. How did Han Yunxi control Myriad Merchant Hall's Elder Council? How did she persuade the D clan to cooperate with Long Feiye? After not seeing her for a long time, that woman's ability had grown. Hand over the war horses first, then take the military pay and provisions. Jun Yixie muttered in his letter. He was also weighing whether or not he could take this risk. He was also weighing how much of Ning Cheng's attitude was true and how much was false. Jun Yixie didn't immediately reply to Ning Cheng. Instead, he said coldly, just wait. I'll think it over. After Jun Yixie left the camp, he saw Bai Yuqiao walking towards him. Bai Yuqiao had talked to him about his master a few times recently. Whenever he saw Bai Yuqiao, he would feel vexed. However, he still asked coldly, has Su Xiaoyu confessed? Not yet. That girl is too stubborn, Bai Yuqiao said truthfully. She had interrogated Su Xiaoyu quite a bit these days. Naturally, she wanted to know the whereabouts of the perplexing butterfly illusion. There are plenty of extreme punishments in the horse farm. What, you still can't get anything out of her? Jun Yixie asked. Senior brother, if that girl dies, we really won't be able to get anything out of her. Besides, Han Yunxi treats the people around her well. That girl has been with her for so long. She can be considered a hostage, Bai Yuqiao analyzed seriously. These words reminded Jun Yixie that if he couldn't come to an agreement with Ning Cheng, he might be able to use Su Xiaoyu to make a fuss. At this moment, his mind was in a mess. He didn't think too much about it and left in a huff. Bai Yuqiao looked at Jun Yixie's back and began to worry. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi had teamed up to challenge Hunter Poison's sect. Were senior brother rush over to help? Han Yunxi's poison skills were profound and unfathomable. She was a match for her master, while Long Fei Ye's martial arts were probably the best in Cloud Realm. If the two of them teamed up, her master would have no chance of winning. Hunter Poison's sect would be in danger. With her master's crafty personality, he might not show himself. Moreover, her senior brother had deep feelings for Hunter Poison's sect. If her master didn't go and her senior brother did, then wouldn't that be Bai Yuqiao didn't dare to think any further. She told herself that she had to keep a close eye on her senior brother for the next few days no matter what. She didn't want him to do something he would regret. Bai Yuqiao was about to follow him when a soldier hurried over to report. "Monsieur, something has happened to the hostage in the prison. What's going on?" Bai Yuqiao was alarmed. The person feeding her wasn't paying attention, and that girl hit her head on the ground. The doctor has already rushed over to save her. The soldier replied truthfully. "Damn it." Bai Yuqiao immediately went to the prison cell. When she arrived, Su Xiaoyu was unconscious and the doctor was treating the wound on her forehead. After Su Xiaoyu was kidnapped, she hadn't said a word or drank a drop of water. She only wanted to die. Not only could Bai Yuqiao not do anything to her, she even had to be careful to prevent her from committing suicide. Bai Yuqiao didn't understand. How could this girl be so stubborn and ruthless at such a young age? Was she really not afraid of death? After the doctor finished treating the wound, Bai Yuqiao had everyone withdraw. She guarded Su Xiaoyu alone, quietly pondering what method she could use to make this girl betray Han Yunxi. She had long sent people to investigate her background. If they could find out about it and find her relatives, perhaps they could threaten her. It was a pity that there wasn't any effective information until now. Orphans were like barefooted people. They wouldn't be afraid of anyone wearing shoes. Bai Yuqiao understood this feeling of having no scruples and being fearless too well. Because she was also an orphan, she was able to feed the whole family and had no worries. Therefore, she was fearless and was willing to risk everything. Han Yunxi's feelings towards Su Xiaoyu were the same as her senior brother's feelings towards her. She was the only person she cared about and was willing to risk everything for. Thinking of this, Bai Yuqiao couldn't help but think, what if one day she found her long-lost younger sister? Would her younger sister replace Ning Cheng's position? She didn't continue thinking about it and summoned the soldiers to watch over her. Watch over her carefully. If anything happens again, be careful of your little lives. After she finished instructing them, she went to senior brother's tent. Since last night, she had been secretly hiding outside and keeping watch for the entire night. There were still 7 days before Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi challenged Hunter Poison's sect. Bai Yuqiao was going to have a lot to endure. At this moment, Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi were still hurrying through the night. Miri at Merchant Hall had already spread the news. She and Long Fei Yi had also written a letter of challenge and sent it to Hunter Poison's sect. Everything was ready except for the east wind. Long Fei Yi, do you think Bai Yanqing has already brought Gu Beiyue to Hunter Poison's sect? Han Yunxi asked excitedly. She couldn't wait to reach Hunter Poison's sect immediately and truly join forces with Long Fei Yi to beat Bai Yanqing to a pulp. Long Fei Yi lazily raised a hand to rub Han Yunxi's head. He seemed to be in a good mood as he smiled. If he tries the same trick again, will you fall for it again? Last time at Tianning's Imperial Palace, she and Ning Cheng had already captured Bai Yanqing. Unfortunately, she wasn't ruthless enough. Even though they had the same chips, Bai Yanqing had used Gu Beiyue to threaten her, so she'd compromised. When the chips were equal, it was a contest of patience. Han Yunxi had never lost before, but she'd lost to Bai Yanqing once. With you here, I won't fall for it, Han Yunxi said seriously. She believed that Long Fei Yi was ruthless and steady enough. She also believed that Long Fei Yi wouldn't be like Ning Cheng and sacrifice Gu Beiyue. She was looking forward to Long Fei Yi and Bai Yanqing's negotiations. Long Fei Yi laughed out loud. Han Yunxi, let me tell you some good news. Do you want to hear it? Chapter 940. Han Yunxi could clearly feel that Long Fei Yi was in a very good mood. Even if Tang Li found Ning Jing and Mu Ling, Long Fei Yi wouldn't have much of a reaction. What good news could make Long Fei Yi laugh so heartily at this time? Han Yunxi really couldn't think of anything. Han Yunxi smiled slyly and answered, "I don't want to hear it. Don't say it." Long Fei Yi was in a good mood today. He originally wanted to whet Han Yunxi's appetite, but he didn't expect to be defeated by Han Yunxi's words. He really wanted to say it, and couldn't wait to share this good news with Han Yunxi. He didn't keep her in suspense, and said directly, "In 2 days, Gu Beiwei will join us." Han Yunxi was stunned and muttered, Who are you talking about? Gu Beiwei." Other than Han Yunxi, Long Fei Yi rarely said a person's name so seriously. Han Yunxi widened her eyes in shock. Gu Beiwei? Gu Beiwei? God, did she hear wrongly? Gu Beiwei. Seeing Han Yunxi's shocked expression, Long Fei Yi calmed down and laughed loudly. "It's Gu Beiwei. He was rescued by Gu and rushed over from Three-Way Black Market. He'll catch up with us in 2 days." Even though she heard it with her own ears, Han Yunxi still couldn't believe her ears. She couldn't sit still anymore. Looking at Long Fei Yi, she grabbed his hand excitedly. What's going on? Are you really not lying to me?" Her heart was hanging in midair. She was really afraid that Long Fei Yi was playing with her. She couldn't bear such disappointment. Long Fei Yi smiled brightly. He took out a secret letter from the stack beside him and handed it to Han Yunxi. "You should recognize his handwriting." Han Yunxi quickly opened the secret letter. However, what she saw was not Gu Beiwei's handwriting, but Tang Li's. She was puzzled, but when she saw the contents of Tang Li's letter, she hurriedly read it and did not have time to ask more questions. Tang Li briefly explained how Gu had rescued Gu Beiwei and how the 3 of them had met in East Origin Palace. In the end, he asked Gu to help him find Ning Jing and Mu Ling. Gu was secretly escorted by several experts. If she hadn't read the letter, Han Yunxi wouldn't have been so shocked. After reading the letter, she didn't know what to say. She never thought that it would be Gu who had rescued Gu Beiwei. Furthermore, he had avoided by Yanqing and directly rescued him from the mountain valley. Gu has performed a great service, Han Yunxi said very seriously. Yes. Although Long Fei Yi only replied with one word, he had acknowledged it. Gu had done so many things, but this was probably the only thing that Long Fei Yi would willingly nod his head in acknowledgement. Record his great service. Han Yunxi quickly spoke up for Gu. Gu Beiwei owes him. Long Fei Yi replied expressionlessly. In other words, he didn't owe Gu anything. If Long Fei Yi and Gu were incompatible, Han Yunxi would definitely believe it. She didn't have time to argue with him. She carefully checked the secret letter and asked nervously, "Where's Gu Beiwei's handwriting?" The letter that Tang Li sent to Long Fei Yi was brought over by the Shadow Guard, so it couldn't be fake. However, she felt uneasy when she didn't see the handwriting. On the back, Long Fei Yi said lightly. Han Yunxi immediately flipped the letter over and saw a familiar line of handwriting. It was clear and strong, with a certain degree of curvature. The handwriting was like the person. Han Yunxi could tell at a glance that it was Gu Beiwei's handwriting. He only wrote one sentence. "Please wait for this subordinate to return and treat the princess's injuries. I hope the princess can stand on the battlefield." This subordinate hid his identity without permission. "I will ask for forgiveness when we meet." Han Yunxi read it over and over again. She couldn't help but giggle foolishly, then shook her head helplessly. It was so familiar. It had been so long. Even though they hadn't seen each other for months, even though the truth was out, Gu Beiwei was still so humble and gentle. He was still so calm. With just one sentence, she could almost see the gentle Dr. Gu standing in front of her, smiling warmly at her, just like how he was in the beginning. Seeing Han Yunxi giggling foolishly, Long Fei Yi pursed his lips. He suddenly reached out and took back the secret letter. He folded it and put it back quietly. Han Yunxi turned to look and inadvertently caught a glimpse of his face. She realized that he didn't seem as happy as before. Han Yunxi felt like saying something, but she didn't know what to say. Long Fei Yi was silent. It seemed like he had no intention of speaking. The two of them suddenly quieted down. An aura that hadn't appeared in a long time gradually spread between the two of them. It was sour. In the end, it was Han Yunshi who spoke first. Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi responded faintly. You. Han Yunshi wanted to say something, but stopped. Long Fei Yi seemed to be quite willing to talk to her. Han Yunshi glanced at him and finally asked, Long Fei Yi, are you hungry? Do you want to eat supper? Long Fei Yi glanced at her. He didn't seem to expect her to ask this question, but he quickly answered, You're hungry. What do you want to eat? Han Yunshi timidly spat out 3 words. It's all sour banquet. After saying that, she burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that she almost lost her image. At this time, Gu Beiyue's identity was already clear, but Long Fei Yi was still jealous. She really had to hand it to him. She wouldn't be satisfied if she didn't ask for a table full of sour banquet from him. Long Fei Yi was 30% embarrassed and 70% helpless. Looking at Han Yunshi, who was laughing so hard, he didn't know what to do with her. It wasn't the first time this woman had dared to mock and tease him. What would he do? Long Fei Yi simply called Su Donglin over. How much longer until we reach the county? We'll reach it at daybreak. Your Highness wants to stay in the county? Su Donglin was puzzled. They had been on the road and hadn't stayed in the county for a long time. Long Fei Yi was about to speak when Han Yunshi quickly said, It's fine. You can leave. Long Fei Yi wasn't going to rest in the county. He was really going to order a table full of sour banquet for her. Su Donglin waited a while, but didn't hear a word from His Highness. He silently withdrew. He didn't understand the world between His Highness and the princess. Sometimes Su Donglin couldn't help but think of his former boss, Chu Shifeng. He hadn't heard from Celestial Mountain in ages, so he wondered how Boss Chu was doing after his martial arts were crippled. If only Boss Chu was still by His Highness's side, serving him. You're not eating anymore? Long Fei asked mildly, as if nothing had happened at all during this meal. Han Yunshi also pretended nothing had happened and replied calmly, I've gained weight recently, so it's better if I don't eat. If you're hungry, don't hold it in. Long Fei Yi was clearly implying something else. Han Yunshi refused to be outdone. I'm not hungry. If you're hungry, don't hold it in. It'll be bad if you starve yourself to death. The two of them had a tacit understanding, but both were holding it in to see who would speak first. Long Fei Yi changed the subject. It's getting late. I'll give you a massage, so you should sleep early. We're not done with business yet. If Bai Yanqing doesn't have anyone on his hands, then... Before Han Yunshi could finish, Long Fei had already sat down on one side and lifted her leg to rest on his thigh before massaging the sole of her foot. Han Yunshi couldn't help but feel nervous. Her leg would feel uncomfortable if it stayed in place for too long. In the later stages, she'd need massages to improve blood circulation and loosen her muscles and ligaments. Although it was supposed to be a foot massage, every time Long Fei Yi massaged her foot, it turned into a full-body exercise. His massages were excellent. A bit too light would make it itchy, while a bit too heavy would make it too hard. The strength was just right, making her feel very comfortable. If Han Yunshi wasn't nervous, this would be a rare pleasure in the world. Unlike in the past, where they chatted while massaging, Long Fei Yi was very quiet at this time. Han Yunshi could only discuss business with him tomorrow. Unexpectedly, after a while, Long Fei Yi said to Uncle Gao, Turn around and head back to meet up with Gu Beiyue. Han Yunshi stared at him in disbelief. Let's walk slower. He'll catch up. Don't be so tormented. She couldn't move, so they could only take a carriage. Gu Beiyue chased after them on horseback, so his speed was naturally much faster than theirs. The sooner your leg heals, the sooner it's healed. It doesn't matter how much you torment it, Long Fei Yi said mildly. Han Yunshi looked at him and couldn't help but gently caress his face. She was full of words, but in the end, she said gently, I'll listen to you. As for Hunter Poison Sect, we'll make further plans when we meet up with Gu Beiyue, Long Fei Yi said. Han Yunshi nodded. Gu Beiyue wasn't in Bai Yanqing's hands, so they had an absolute chance of victory. Their letter of challenge had long reached Hunter Poison sect, so everyone in Cloud Realm continent knew about it. Bai Yanqing wouldn't be such a coward. Even if he didn't accept the challenge, they didn't mind taking 100 Poison sect under their wing. As they chatted, Han Yunshi suddenly discovered a problem in the letter and exclaimed, "Long Fei Yi, in other words, the true master behind Golden Wing Hall, is Gu." No wonder Gu was so generous with his money and filled Cloud Realm continent with tea houses and estates. In the end, it was all thanks to Gu Qishao that these two troublesome events had happened. Long Fei, you didn't even care about Myriad Merchant Hall, much less the third-ranked Golden Wing Hall in three-way black market. He focused on massaging Han Yunshi without saying a word. What would Gu's expression look like when he found out she was the one who'd helped Myriad Merchant Hall settle those two storms? That devastatingly beautiful face would definitely stiffen. Thinking up to here, Han Yunshi couldn't help but burst into laughter. "What are you laughing at?" Long Fei Yi asked. "Nothing." Han Yunshi didn't dare to tell the truth. Long Fei Yi looked at her seriously, so Han Yunshi could only beat around the bush. "I'm happy. I'll be able to stand up soon." That was a very reasonable reason. By now, the foot massage was over as well. Long Fei Yi carefully moved her legs aside. Han Yunshi couldn't resist sneaking a glance at him. What a rare sight, this guy didn't push his luck this time. But Long Fei Yi quickly leaned over and asked in a low voice, "You're not tired, are you?" She was indeed overthinking things. There was no exception when it came to foot massages. However, unlike before, Han Yunshi could clearly feel Long Fei Yi's domineering strength this time. It was especially domineering. She felt like her body was about to be penetrated and her soul was about to be crushed. Although he was rude and unreasonable, she was willing to endure it and even snickered. He was clearly the one who changed the topic of the sour banquet, but he was clearly warning her with his actions, punishing her, and retaliating against her. She was the only one who could truly understand just how much of a man Long Fei was. Soon, Han Yunshi couldn't think too much. That man's domineering strength forced her body and soul to follow his rhythm, gradually tensing up. It was as if something was imprisoning her, waiting for the opening to open. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.